Chapter 28-48. As the spirit of the world, Little Qing definitely had to step forward and stop this so-called new world because the progenitors were blatantly ignoring the world. As the spirit of the world, Little Qing definitely had to step forward and stop this so-called new world because the progenitors were blatantly ignoring the world. The creator of the laws was the world, and Little Qing represented the world. The progenitors were forcibly stripping away the emotions and desires of all living beings. They were blatantly ignoring the world, so Little Qing definitely had to step forward and stop them. That was exactly why Little Qing and Xiao Chen's group had reached a consensus without any hesitation. The reason was very simple. They all had the same goal. However, in Little Qing's opinion, it was still very difficult to fight the progenitors with their current strength. That was why Little Qing had sought out the old tree. Or it could be said that Little Qing needed the help of the living beings in the land of creation. For so many years, Little Qing had given life to many living beings in the land of creation and allowed them to awaken their consciousness. Under the nurturing of the land of creation, these living beings possessed great strength. This time, as the spirit of the world, Little Qing definitely couldn't win the battle with the progenitors alone. That was why Little Qing needed other forces. If the base of the progenitors was the origin world, then Little Qing's base was the land of creation. The old tree was silent for a moment when he heard Little Qing's words, and then he said, "I'll sacrifice my life for you." The old tree couldn't refuse Little Qing's order. Little Qing smiled and pointed with a finger. A pure and enormous life force immediately surged towards the old tree. This life force was far from what Xiao Chen's pills could compare to. After receiving this life force, the old tree immediately surged with dense life force. "Don't die. Once the preparations are complete, I'll directly open the land of creation. At that time, it'll be the time to fight those fellows." This time, the battle with the progenitors wouldn't be a battle of life and death. It would be a battle of life and death. It was destined that only one side would survive. Therefore, regardless of whether it was Little Qing or the primogenitors, they would definitely do their best. Little Qing had directly opened up the place of creation and was also prepared to fight to the death. The old tree was taken aback. It didn't expect that Little Qing would open the origin ground. If that was the case, the progenitors would be able to enter the origin ground. Not only the primogenitors, but anyone else could also enter the creation ground. However, this also showed that Little Qing was going all out. After being stunned for a moment, Old Tree did not object. After all, this was Little Qing's decision and Old Tree had no right to object. The only thing he could do was to follow Little Qing's orders. "Alright, contact the others during this period of time and get them ready." After saying that, Little Qing disappeared from where she stood. She had no intention of staying here for long. Due to Little Qing's instructions, the old tree did visit many other living beings in the land of creation. Soon after, the living beings in the land of creation knew that it wouldn't be peaceful anymore. The moment Little Qing opened up the land of creation, it would be the time for everyone to erupt into war. All of a sudden, there was a feeling that a storm was brewing in the land of creation. However, the warmongers like the Stone Spirit race and the Fire Spirit race were obviously more excited about the upcoming battle. Not only were they not nervous about the battle, but they were also looking forward to the battle. The Stone Spirit race and the Fire Spirit race, who had never come into contact with the martialists of the outside world, were clearly more excited. The atmosphere in the origin ground changed. After a long time, Xiao Chen and the others made the fastest progress. Xiao Chen's soul, which had been shattered and obliterated, had finally gathered completely and gradually formed a human figure. Little Qing was very satisfied with such progress. If nothing went wrong, Xiao Chen could almost be said to have succeeded. The fact that his soul could recover to such a state meant that he wasn't far from a true rebirth. Moreover, after this period of recovery, Xiao Chen's soul power had also soared to a terrifying level. It was completely different from before. In addition, with the recovery of his soul, Xiao Chen's consciousness also began to recover. Sensing his current powerful soul power, Xiao Chen couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. such soul power had already exceeded Xiao Chen's expectations. Was this the soul power that was comparable to the ancient living beings? This was the true strength of the ancient living beings. They could be said to be immortal and indestructible, second only to the primogenitors. Xiao Chen was very excited about his progress. He began to accelerate the speed of condensation and strive to complete the transformation of his soul in the shortest time possible. Xiao Chen was almost successful. As for the others, the fastest progress was Dongfang Yun and Lin Yun. Dongfang Yun and Xiao Chen had experienced the baptism of the spiritual pool at the same time. It was understandable that she was faster in the matter of soul rebirth. However, the most surprising one was Lin Yun. Lin Yun had never entered the spiritual pool, but his progress was not inferior to Dongfang Yun's. He was only slightly slower than Xiao Chen. Even little Qing was secretly surprised by such progress. If Lin Yun were to enter the spiritual pool, Lin Yun's progress would probably be the fastest. In this way, Lin Yun's soul power was probably the strongest among everyone. He could only reach such a fast speed by relying on his original soul power. From the current situation, Xiao Chen, Dongfang Yun, and Lin Yun should be the first to succeed. Moreover, as long as there were no accidents, the three of them could basically complete the first step of soul rebirth. As for the others, Xinyuan Ling, Mo, and the others, although their progress was slower, there was no problem. However, there were still 2 world lords who died because they couldn't stabilize themselves. For this reason, although little Qing was helpless, there was nothing she could do. This was a fact that was bound to happen. Xiao Chen's situation became more and more stable over the next few days. He had no idea how much time had passed, but he felt that his soul had reached a perfect level. His soul, which had been crushed by Xiao Qing before, had been completely restored and had undergone a qualitative leap. Now, Xiao Chen's soul could no longer be compared to before. With a gentle wave of her hand, the black light ball that enveloped Xiao Chen directly shattered. The energy within had long been absorbed by Xiao Chen. With the shattering of the black light ball, it also meant that Xiao Chen had successfully come out of seclusion. His soul had completely undergone a qualitative change, reaching the level of an ancient life form, surpassing the boundary of an ordinary life form. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 2849. Xiao Chen successfully exited his seclusion. The moment he broke the black sphere, little Qing appeared before Xiao Chen. Seeing that Xiao Chen had finally succeeded, little Qing said with a smile. Not bad. Xiao Chen successfully exited his seclusion. The moment he broke the black sphere, little Qing appeared before Xiao Chen. Seeing that Xiao Chen had finally succeeded, little Qing said with a smile. Not bad. Xiao Chen was the first to exit his seclusion. This was within little Qing's expectations. Lin Yun and Dongfang Yun should be done soon. However, what little Qing didn't expect was that Lin Yun's progress had surpassed Dongfang Yun's. Little Qing reckoned that Lin Yun would be the second to exit his seclusion. Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief after successfully surviving the first stage. After all, spiritual rebirth wasn't a joke. An accident could very well lead to death. Fortunately, Xiao Chen managed to survive in the end. Little Qing wasn't in a hurry to start the second stage. After all, the others hadn't exited their seclusion yet. Therefore, little Qing let Xiao Chen rest for a period of time. Besides, Lin Yun and Dongfang Yun should be able to exit their seclusion in 2 days. After leading Xiao Chen out of the space, little Qing said to Xiao Chen, "After everything is over, I plan to open the land of creation directly." It wasn't a secret that little Qing wanted to open the land of creation. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chen was taken aback, but he didn't stop her. After all, little Qing's actions obviously wouldn't do any harm to Xiao Chen and the others. The reason why she wanted to open the land of creation was undoubtedly to deal with the primogenitors. In this way, with little Qing's help, Xiao Chen and the others were obviously more confident. Moreover, many creatures in the land of creation weren't weak. Xiao Chen and the others had long known about this. Xiaochen naturally agreed with Little Qing's decision. With Little Qing in the land of creation, in addition to the beast slaves and other ancient creatures, as well as himself and the others who succeeded in the end, they indeed had the capital to contend with the origin world. It seemed that coming to the land of creation was the right choice. Next, Xiaochen inquired about the situation of Qin Shuru and the others. After learning that they had begun their seclusion and weren't in great danger, Xiaochen heaved a sigh of relief. Compared to Xiaochen and the others, Qin Shuru and the others didn't pose any threat to them when they broke through to the World Lord level. If nothing unexpected happened, they should succeed. However, on Xiaochen's side, 2 of them had died in the first stage and didn't succeed. Xiaochen was also a little disappointed when he heard this news. Everyone had entered the land of creation together, but 2 of them had already died. This made Xiaochen feel very uncomfortable. Although the 2 world lords who died weren't very familiar with Xiaochen, they were all in the same boat. It was impossible for him to remain indifferent. This is inevitable. I've said before that it's impossible to be 100% successful. If we can't meet the requirements, this is naturally the result, Little Qing comforted him. If they could succeed so easily, then these ancient life forms would be too cheap. Moreover, this was only the first stage. By the time they reached the second stage, there would probably be more people who would fall. Regarding this, Little Qing was completely unable to control. Next, Xiaochen waited alone for a few days. As expected, Lin Yun was the second to succeed. Seeing that Lin Yun was safe and sound, Xiaochen finally relaxed a little. He smiled and went up to Lin Yun. "This time, you're 1 step behind me. Isn't it because you found the spiritual pool? If not for the spiritual pool, you wouldn't be faster than me." Xiaochen was able to succeed 1 step faster than Lin Yun because of the spiritual pool. Without the spiritual pool, Xiaochen wouldn't be able to suppress Lin Yun. Xiaochen didn't refute this. Moreover, there was nothing to compare with. As long as they could succeed, it was fine. In front of a group of world lords, Lin Yun's strength was undoubtedly top-notch. Therefore, it wasn't strange that he could successfully complete the first stage. If even Lin Yun failed, then it would be even more impossible for the others to succeed. After Lin Yun came out of seclusion, only 2 days had passed. Dong Fangyan also successfully completed the first stage and broke out of seclusion. At present, 3 people had successfully come out of seclusion. As for the remaining people, other than the 2 world lords who had already died, they were in good condition. They only needed a little more time, and there shouldn't be any problems. After learning from Xiaochen that 2 people failed to pass the first stage of seclusion, Lin Yun said in a low voice, "Don't worry about this. After all, we knew the risks from the beginning. If we fail, we have to bear such risks." Lin Yun certainly hoped that everyone could succeed. However, how could there be so many perfect things in this world? It was impossible. If someone succeeded, there would definitely be someone who failed. Hearing this, Xiaochen nodded. Lin Yun was right. This was something that couldn't be helped. Xiaochen couldn't help them. The only thing he could do was to try his best to ensure that he didn't fail. In the following period of waiting, Mo He, Ancestor He, Mu Ling Xian, and the others also successfully came out of seclusion. Finally, with the last person coming out, the first stage of seclusion was completely over. It ended at the cost of 2 people's lives. This kind of success rate was actually not low. At least, it was higher than Little Qing's previous expectations. After everyone rested and adjusted their states, Little Qing quickly let everyone start the second stage of seclusion. Their souls had completely transformed. There was no need for Little Qing to say this. Xiaochen and the others could feel it themselves. Now, compared to before, Xiaochen and the others' soul power had absolutely changed. They couldn't be compared to before. Their souls had reached true perfection. Even the little impurities had been completely removed. Now, Xiaochen and the others' souls were the purest. Compared to other creatures, now Xiaochen and the others' souls were like a pure land that hadn't been polluted. In terms of soul power alone, Xiao Chen and the others' battle power wasn't weaker than them at their peak. This was under the condition that they didn't have a physical body. Once they could reforge their physical bodies, Xiao Chen and the others' battle power would definitely surpass the realm of a world lord. They would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the ancient voice. With this kind of strength, in the next battle against the primogenitors, Xiao Chen and the others would definitely not be like before. They would definitely be able to fight back. However, in order to truly reach the level of the ancient creatures, Xiao Chen and the others still had one last step. That was to reforge their physical bodies. After their souls were perfect, they also needed to have an absolutely perfect physical body. Only then could Xiao Chen and the others truly complete the upgrade of their life level. Next, Xiao Chen and the others would have to face the reforging of their physical bodies. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2850. Little Qing did not explain too much about the physical body reconstruction. After all, she had already said what she needed to say. Moreover, after the first stage, everyone saw with their own eyes that 2 of the world lords had died due to failure. The danger of the physical body reconstruction was no less than the first stage. Therefore, if they wanted to survive, everyone had to try their best to succeed. Once they failed, the consequences would be death. Everyone was very clear about this, so they did not dare to be careless. After all, no one wanted to follow in the footsteps of the 2 world lords. This time, Little Qing brought everyone to different spaces. First, it was Xiao Chen who came to an independent space. There was nothing in it. At this time, Little Qing forced out a drop of essence blood from her body. This is my essence blood. It is also the first drop of essence blood in the world. If you want to reconstruct your physical body and achieve the strength of an ancient life form, your physical body must be strong enough. This essence blood is the most important. You have to refine it, absorb it, and use its power to reconstruct your physical body. As a spirit of the world, Little Qing's essence blood was extremely violent. It was needless to say how difficult it was to refine it. However, this was the most basic thing. If one wanted their physical body to be strong enough, they had to think of all ways to refine this drop of essence blood. As her voice fell, Little Qing flicked her finger. Immediately, a drop of essence blood quickly formed a sea of blood. The originally empty space turned into a sea of blood under Xiao Chen's gaze. This was only a drop of essence blood. Looking at the vast sea formed by her drop of essence blood, Little Qing said faintly, "Go." This drop of essence blood was the foundation of the physical body reconstruction. However, Little Qing naturally prepared other treasures of heaven and earth. Moreover, there were a lot of them and they were extremely precious. These treasures, together with this drop of essence blood, were enough to upgrade the physical body of Xiao Chen and the others to the same level as an ancient life form. Of course, the premise was that they could succeed. Hearing Little Qing's words, Xiao Chen did not hesitate too much. He nodded and directly jumped into the sea of blood. As soon as Xiao Chen entered the sea of blood, he felt as if something was constantly pulling him. A strong suction force pulled Xiao Chen into the depths of the sea of blood. Moreover, during this process, Xiao Chen felt that the energy in the sea of blood was frantically clinging to his surroundings like maggots. It was as if it wanted to stick to him. The blood spots constantly clung to Xiao Chen's soul. Moreover, with the appearance of these blood spots, Xiao Chen felt an extremely hot feeling. It was fine at first, but as time went by, the hot feeling became more and more. It was as if he was being roasted on a grill. His soul felt as if it was trembling. He already knew that rebuilding the physical body was not an easy task. He would definitely have to endure intense pain. However, this was just the beginning and it was already so unbearable. Xiao Chen had to admit that he had underestimated the difficulty of rebuilding the physical body. If the previous rebirth of the soul was not painful, and everything was done in a daze, then the reconstruction of the physical body was definitely the torture of a cripple. When the soul was scattered, everyone was unconscious. Under such circumstances, even if one did not succeed in the end, there would not be any pain. It could be said that one would die unknowingly. However, rebuilding the physical body was completely different. One's consciousness was very clear, but the intense pain was constantly tormenting them. This kind of torture was not temporary. It was a continuous torture. Throughout the entire process, if one could not endure it, they could only die in pain. Compared to rebuilding the physical body, perhaps the first stage of soul rebirth was easier for people to accept. After all, there was no pain at that time. The whole process would not be uncomfortable at all. His body continued to sink. In fact, from the moment Xiaochen jumped into the blood sea until now, he had just familiarized himself with it. However, due to the intense pain, Xiaochen felt that time was passing very slowly in his perception. The pain was getting more and more unbearable. It could be seen that the surface of Xiaochen's soul was covered by countless blood spots. These blood spots were constantly emitting a high temperature, as if they were going to melt Xiaochen's soul. Accompanied by such a high temperature, a piercing pain came. Under the double pain, even Xiaochen found it somewhat unbearable. However, no matter how painful it was, he could not relax at this time. Once he relaxed, there would only be one result: death. He gritted his teeth and persevered. In fact, in terms of willpower, Xiaochen did not lose to anyone. This was because from the beginning of his cultivation until now, Xiaochen had endured no less pain than anyone else. But even so, Xiaochen still found the pain unbearable. However, no matter how unbearable it was, Xiaochen had to persevere. He couldn't die, and he didn't want to die. There were still a lot of concerns in his heart. If he died, what would happen to the people around him? Qingshuru, Flower Fairy, Xiao Qing, Xiao Yao, Xiao Luan, and his parents. What would happen to them? He persevered bitterly. At the same time, while Xiaochen was persevering, Lin Yun and the rest also began the process of rebuilding their physical bodies under the leadership of Little Qing. Just like Xiaochen, Lin Yun and the rest were also enduring the same pain. Looking at Xiaochen and the rest struggling in the sea of blood, Little Qing said expressionlessly, "This is only the beginning. It wasn't that easy to obtain the same strength as the ancient creatures. Perhaps Xiaochen and the rest couldn't bear the pain anymore, but this was only the beginning." As time passed, the pain would become more and more intense. In the end, those who couldn't persevere could only die in agony. Without an absolutely strong willpower, how could one obtain strength that surpassed the level of a world lord? One had to know that this was breaking the shackles of life. It was obviously impossible to succeed so easily. Back then, the process of the ancient creature's birth was actually the same. They also endured the pain of being crippled. However, compared to the ancient creatures like the beast slaves, Xiaochen and the rest obviously suffered more intense pain. It couldn't be helped. Xiaochen and the rest weren't ancient creatures. They were just one of the many living beings. In this way, in order to completely break the shackles, the price that they had to pay was naturally much higher than the ancient creatures. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2851. Xiaochen and the others were enduring extreme pain. Although they were all world lords in the outside world and dominated a part of the universe, their willpower was definitely not comparable to that of ordinary people. Even the hardships they had experienced were absolutely unimaginable to ordinary people. Even so, facing such pain was still unbearable for Xiaochen and the others. Such pain could no longer be described with words, and it should be known that this was only the beginning. However, there was no other way. Everything that happened next would depend on Xiaochen and the others. Little Qing would not and could not help them. Just like the previous soul rebirth, she had done everything she could. As for whether they could succeed in the end, it would depend on Xiaochen and the others' luck. His consciousness had become extremely blurry. Xiaochen was now only clinging to the last trace of clarity. Xiaochen's intuition told him that he had to hold on to this last trace of consciousness. Once this last trace of consciousness fell into chaos, there would be no other way. Therefore, Xiaochen tried his best to hold on to this last trace of consciousness. he allowed the intense pain to engulf his entire body. Xiaochen gritted his teeth and persevered. However, under such intense pain, it could be seen that the blood-colored spots that were originally attached to Xiaochen's soul seemed to be slowly fusing with Xiaochen's soul at this time, beginning the process of building a physical body for himself. It was indeed rebuilding his physical body, but the process was very slow and painful. The blood-colored spots seemed to have turned into flesh and skin, slowly growing outside Xiaochen's soul. At the same time, more energy began to build Xiaochen's bones, meridians, and other things. However, all of this was only the beginning. It was still too early to wait for it to be completed. And before the physical body was completely formed, the intense pain would not disappear and would always follow Xiaochen. The second stage of seclusion had already begun. Qinshuru and the others were also refining the origin source. After this period of refining, Qinshuru and the others' cultivation had also improved greatly. They were not far from breaking through to become a world lord. The situation in the land of creation was still under control, but it was completely different in the outside world. As the primogenitors sped up, the various universes fell every day. Within a universe called the Nightmare Awaken World, Shao Qing, Bai Ruyue, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan were hidden there. After parting ways in the primordial world, Shao Qing and Bai Ruyue brought the three little fellows to the nightmare world. They found a small city on one of the continents and settled down there. They were accompanied by a group of Divine Palace experts. Of course, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Shao Qing and the others did not reveal their true strength after living in seclusion. They only revealed enough strength to survive here. How could Shao Qing not understand the principle of a tall tree attracting the wind? And right now, in this small city, Shao Qing and the others used the identity of the Shao clan to conceal themselves. Furthermore, they were also sought after as one of the three great clans. They had a rather large mansion in the city. Of course, this residence could not compare to the Divine Palace, but it at least gave them a place to stay for the time being. Shao Qing and the others did not intend to fight for supremacy. Ever since they came to this small city, they had lived in seclusion and did not participate in any battles in the outside world. They did not care about benefits, so their relationship with the local great families was quite good. It had been almost 5 years since Xiaochen and the others had entered the land of creation, but there had been no news. The situation in the other universes had become more and more dangerous. If it was not for the fact that the Nightmare Awaken world was at the edge of this world, it would have fallen long ago. On this day, Shao Qing, Cang Xing, and the others gathered in the main hall. Shao Qing sat on the main seat and said solemnly, "Is there still no news from Chener and the others?" "Not yet." "How are the others?" "Not too good. Many universes have been destroyed, and we've lost many people." With so many people in the Divine Palace, it was naturally impossible for all of them to hide in the Nightmare Awaken world. Instead, they were scattered across the various universes. In just 5 years, more than half of the universes had been shared by the primogenitors, and more cultivators had their emotions and desires extracted, becoming the primogenitors' puppets to attack other universes. The Sacred Palace had already lost a lot of people. It wasn't that these people didn't want to run, but once the universe they were hiding in fell, there was nowhere to run. They could only have their emotions and desires extracted. Once they lost their emotions and desires, they naturally wouldn't have any loyalty to the Sacred Palace. After hearing Cang Xing's reply, Shao Qing did not say anything else. The situation was becoming worse and worse, and this was only in the outside world. The places where Shao Qing and the others were hiding were also in some trouble. Although this was only a small problem, Shao Qing and the others still had to be careful because the consequences would be unthinkable if their whereabouts were exposed. The primogenitors hated the Sacred Palace to the core and no longer looked down on them like they did at the beginning. While Shao Qing was silent, a Divine Palace expert walked in and said coldly, "Vice Sect Master, that Jean Brat is here again." Shao Qing and Cang Xing's expressions darkened, and Cang Xing shouted angrily, "Is that brat really not afraid of death?" That Jean Brat was the young sect master of a large sect nearby. Although it was a large sect, the strongest person there was only at the heaven realm. His strength was simply too weak. However, this guy felt very good about himself. Once, this guy had taken a liking to Xiao Luan. Since then, he had been pestering her. Xiao Qing and the others didn't care about it at first. It wasn't worth it to expose themselves for such an ant. However, this Jean Brat became worse and worse. In the end, he even threatened Xiao Qing and said that he would marry Xiao Luan to him. A mere sky tier ant actually dared to have designs on Xiao Luan. This infuriated Xiao Qing quite a bit. If it wasn't for the sake of the big picture, Xiao Qing would have annihilated this small sect long ago. How could he allow them to act so presumptuously here? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 2852. The brat with the surname Zhang came again. Hearing this news, Xiao Qing and Song Xing's faces darkened. The two of them naturally did not fear the brat with the surname Zhang in the slightest. However, in order to avoid trouble, they chose to ignore him. After all, compared to him, the primogenitor's matters were more important, and Xiao Qing was not willing to expose his position for such a piece of trash. It was a pity that even though Xiao Qing had chosen to ignore him, the more this ant jumped, the more excited he became. This was probably what they meant by the ignorant are fearless. This was because they had never seen any experts before, and their cultivation had not reached Xiao Qing's level. They knew very little about the outside world and only saw the surrounding area. Let alone the world, they did not even know much about the Dark Awakened world. He was like a frog at the bottom of a well. The world he could see was only as big as the mouth of the well. Therefore, he naturally thought that the world was only that big. He did not understand the vastness of the world at all. Logically speaking, someone like him did not have the qualifications to come into contact with Xiao Qing and the others. Not only was the difference in their cultivation levels too great, but there were also other reasons that allowed them to come into contact with each other. Yet, this toad wanted to eat swan meat. We can't go on like this. This guy comes every 2 or 3 days. It seems that we need to give him a warning, Song Xing said with a cold expression. Hearing this, Xiao Qing did not refuse this time. This brat surnamed Zhang had repeatedly come recklessly. He did need to give him a warning. Let Xiao Yao deal with it. In the end, Xiao Qing handed the matter to Xiao Yao. As the young master of the sacred palace, Xiao Yao's personality was very calm and steady, so it should not be difficult for her to deal with this. Moreover, Xiao Yao was more than enough to deal with a sect that only had a heaven realm expert. Song Xing did not refuse Xiao Qing's suggestion because Xiao Yao had indeed changed a lot in the past few years. Even Xiao Lao was no longer as impulsive as before. Without their father by their side, the two brothers had completely grown up. After handing the matter over to Xiao Yao, a young man was sitting on the main seat in the front hall with his head held high. His appearance could only be described as ordinary, but he gave people a feeling of arrogance. This young man was the young man with the surname Zhang who had been pestering Xiao Luan. His name was Zhang Kunlin, and his sect was called the Fenglin sect. It was indeed the #1 sect in this area, but in the eyes of Xiao Qing and the others, it was simply too weak. Unfortunately, Zhang Kunlin knew nothing about this. This time, he came to look for Xiao Luan again. Ever since he saw Xiao Luan for the first time, Zhang Kunlin could not forget Xiao Luan and was completely attracted to her. Zhang Kunlin waited arrogantly for Xiao Luan. At the same time, in the backyard, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan also knew that Zhang Kunlin had come looking for them again. Xiao Yao also received orders from Xiao Qing to let him handle this matter. This reckless thing. Brother, let's just annihilate that bullsh** T Fenglin sect. The hot-tempered Xiao Lao wanted to annihilate the Fenglin sect immediately after knowing that Zhang Kunlin had come again. With the strength of the two brothers, annihilating the Fenglin sect was simply a piece of cake. However, Xiao Yao shook his head and said, a mere Fenglin sect is naturally nothing to be afraid of. However, we can't lose sight of the bigger picture for the sake of small gains and expose our existence. Xiao Yao had never placed Zhang Kunlun and the Feng Lin sect in his eyes. What Xiao Yao was really worried about was the origin world. If there wasn't the threat of the origin world, how could a clown like Zhang Kunlun keep jumping around? However, it seemed like his grandfather couldn't tolerate it anymore. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let him handle this matter. Therefore, Xiao Yao chuckled and said to Xiao Luan, who was at the side. Speaking of which, isn't it because of Big Sister's natural beauty that completely attracted him? He was still in the mood to joke. Upon hearing this, Xiao Luan's expression remained indifferent and he replied without any change in expression. I'm not interested in him. If it weren't for the big picture, I would have killed him long ago. Naturally, Xiao Luan wouldn't be interested in Zhang Kunlun. All these years, Xiao Luan had seen all kinds of geniuses. Even an ordinary disciple of the sacred palace was countless times more outstanding than Zhang Kunlun. To put it bluntly, Xiao Luan and Zhang Kunlun weren't on the same path. There shouldn't be any interactions between them. Xiao Yao smiled in response to Xiao Luan's indifferent reply. Then, she stood up and said, I'll go take a look. Xiao Lao, don't act recklessly. Since the matter had been handed over to her, Xiao Yao naturally had to settle it. However, before she left, she reminded Xiao Lao not to act recklessly. After all, this younger brother of hers was capable of doing anything. She was afraid that he would act rashly and destroy the Feng Lin sect. That would be troublesome. Upon hearing Xiao Yao's words, Xiao Lao nodded unhappily. Then, Xiao Yao strode out of the backyard and came to the front hall to meet Zhang Kunlun. After waiting in the front hall for a long time, Zhang Kunlun still didn't see Xiao Luan. Just when Zhang Kunlun was about to lose his patience, Xiao Yao strode in. Zhang Kunlun obviously knew Xiao Yao. When he saw Xiao Yao, he also stood up and smiled. Brother Xiao Yao, why isn't your sister here? Knowing that Xiao Yao was Xiao Luan's younger brother, Zhang Kunlun said with a smile. Xiao Yao smiled in response. Zhang Kunlun, actually, it's impossible between you and my sister. What's the point of pestering her like this? Once these words came out, Zhang Kunlun's face instantly turned gloomy. Although Xiao Luan had indeed never looked at him directly from the start, these words were still incomparably ear-piercing to Zhang Kunlun's ears. Zhang Kunlun's face turned ashen as he said coldly. Xiao Yao, what do you mean by this? Is your Xiao clan looking down on my Feng Lin sect? As expected, he used the Feng Lin sect as an excuse. If it was someone else, they would probably be suppressed by the Feng Lin sect. However, in Xiao Yao's opinion, the Feng Lin sect didn't possess any threat at all. Therefore, when facing Zhang Kunlun, Xiao Yao only smiled faintly. It doesn't matter if we look down on you or not. It's just a word of advice. Xiao Yao, I think your Xiao clan doesn't know what's good for you. Today, I'll make it clear. I like Xiao Luan. Your Xiao clan must marry Xiao Luan to me. Otherwise, your Xiao clan can forget about existing. This was a blatant threat. Moreover, he was using the entire Xiao clan to threaten Xiao Yao. In the face of such a threat, not only was Xiao Yao not afraid, but she was also secretly amused. A mere Feng Lin sect actually wanted to destroy the Xiao clan? What a joke! Putting everything else aside, any random servant in this mansion was an expert from the sacred palace. Any one of them was enough to destroy the Feng Lin sect. Yet, Zhang Kunlun actually dared to threaten them. He really didn't know how to write the word death. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2853. This Zhang Kunlun in front of him had already lost his mind and acted recklessly. Originally, he wanted to persuade Zhang Kunlun. It would be best if Zhang Kunlun could listen to him. Then, everyone would be safe and sound. But now, it seemed that wanting Zhang Kunlun to listen to him was simply playing the lute to a cow. The corners of Zhang Kunlun's lips curled into a faint smile. Sensing the smile on Xiao Yao's face, Zhang Kunlun asked curiously. What are you smiling at? I'm smiling at how some people don't know the difference between life and death. Xiao Yao's words infuriated Zhang Kunlun instantly. However, before he could speak again, a terrifying aura surged from Xiao Yao's body. Besides, the surrounding space had been confined by Xiao Yao from the start. At this very moment, everything that happened in this room wouldn't be known to the outside world, let alone the slightest bit of aura leaking out. Facing Xiao Yao's sudden burst of pressure, Zhang Kunlun was stunned on the spot. With his level, it was naturally impossible for him to come into contact with an expert like Xiao Yao. After all, even his father was only a Sky Realm expert and couldn't be compared to Xiao Yao at all. You! Stunned, he opened his mouth but couldn't utter a single word. In this regard, Xiao Yao had already lost her patience. A scoundrel like Zhang Kunlun would only be a scourge if she kept him alive. Besides, since he was courting death, he couldn't blame anyone else. The smile on Xiao Yao's face grew increasingly sinister as she approached Zhang Kunlun step by step. Zhang Kunlun, there's a saying that goes, you refuse to take the path to heaven, but barge into hell. Do you know what it means? You dare to kill me? My father is the sect leader of the Fenglin sect. If you kill me, my father won't let you off. From Xiao Yao, Zhang Kunlun clearly sensed a strong murderous intent. This person before him wanted to kill him. Zhang Kunlun was horrified. Facing the threat of death, he could only use his father to threaten her. In this area, the Fenglin sect definitely had a great reputation. If it were anyone else, they would probably be fearful. But it was a pity that Xiao Yao wasn't one of them. Let alone a mere Fenglin sect. Even if it was the Overlord faction of the Nightmare Awakened world, Xiao Yao would not fear them. After all, what level of existence was the Sacred Palace? That was a colossus that could compete with the overlords of the Nightmare world. Not to mention, was the Nightmare Awakened world one of the many universes? His strength was still at the bottom, far inferior to the Great Thousand Worlds. If it was before, at its peak, it was not impossible for the Divine Palace to conquer the Awakened world. Zhang Kunlun had no idea what kind of existence Xiao Yao was. He was still using his father to threaten her. Little did he know that his words were heard by Xiao Yao. It was just a joke. Don't worry, your father will go down to accompany you soon. Now, I'll have to trouble you to go first. As she spoke, Xiao Yao tapped out with her finger, and an azure light flashed. Facing Xiao Yao's attack, an extreme aura of death instantly covered Zhang Kunlun's body. In his terror, Zhang Kunlun hurriedly cried out, "Don't kill me, At the last moment, Zhang Kunlun was indeed afraid, but it was a pity that Xiao Yao did not give him a chance. Since she had already attacked, she would not show mercy. This was something that Xiao Yao had learned from her father. Zhang Kunlun was instantly killed. At the same time, the sharp sword Qi destroyed Zhang Kunlun's corpse, leaving only a puddle of blood on the ground. Zhang Kunlun's corpse could not be seen at all. Killing Zhang Kunlun was a piece of cake for Xiao Yao. After doing all of this, Zhang Kunlun removed the restrictions around the room and walked out. He then said to a Sacred Palace expert waiting outside, "Tidy up." "Yes, young master." The rest of the matters would naturally be handled by the Sacred Palace, but killing Zhang Kunlun was just the beginning. Next, there was still the Fenglin sect. Xiao Yao would not be soft-hearted. On the way back to the backyard, Xiao Yao saw that Xiao Lao had returned. He hurriedly went up and asked, "Brother, how is it?" "Killed." "Good kill." "All right, one Zhang Kunlun is not worth mentioning, but we still have to deal with the Fenglin sect. Tonight, you will go with me to the Fenglin sect." Xiao Yao still wanted to make a move on the Fenglin sect. Hearing this, Xiao Lao naturally would not object. If it wasn't for Xiao Yao stopping him, Xiao Lao would have already destroyed the dog's hit Fenglin sect. Now that Xiao Yao was preparing to make a move on the Fenglin sect, Xiao Lao could not wait to raise both hands in agreement. How could he refuse? Xiao Yao smiled and shook his head, not saying much. At the same time, Xiao Luan also walked over and asked, "You killed Zhang Kunlun. Will there be any trouble?" "There will definitely be, but there will be more trouble if we don't kill him. Since we are not taking the initiative to attack, there shouldn't be a problem to destroy the foal insect. Xiao Yao definitely didn't kill Zhang Kunlun on impulse. Instead, she made the choice after weighing the pros and cons. Killing Zhang Kunlun would indeed cause some trouble, but leaving him alive would cause more trouble. Moreover, with Zhang Kunlun's persistent and shameless character, who knew what kind of trouble he would cause in the future? Hence, killing him directly was the most time-saving and energy-efficient method. Although doing so might incur the wrath of the foal insect, so what? They could just wipe him out together. At that time, they could plan a little and shift the suspicion to someone else. It shouldn't be too difficult to do so. After all, in the eyes of outsiders, their Shao clan didn't have the ability to destroy the foal insect overnight. Therefore, there wouldn't be many people suspecting them. Hearing Xiao Yao's words, Xiao Luan nodded. "All right, I will go with you guys tonight." This matter had arisen because of him, so Xiao Luan wanted to go with Xiao Yao and his brother. Xiao Yao didn't refuse. After all, Xiao Luan was stronger than the two of them and would be able to help. Xiao Yao didn't report this matter to Xiao Qing, and Xiao Qing didn't ask too much. With regards to his grandson's ability, Xiao Qing still had a lot of trust. Moreover, a small foal insect was very easy for Xiao Yao to deal with. It was indeed something that could be easily dealt with, but there were always changes. Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao evidently didn't expect that a small foal insect would draw out such a massive existence from the nightmare-awakened world, causing them to fall into an extremely dangerous forbidden area. It was really not a bad idea to publicize it. It was worth it. After all, there were many sources of books, and they could be updated quickly. Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan didn't know about these things. Only when night fell did Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan use the cover of the night to secretly leave the city and rush towards the foal insect. Begging for bookmarks, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2854. In the night, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan quickly rushed towards the foal insect. The foal insect wasn't too far away, so it didn't take much time for the three of them to arrive at the foal insect. In the night, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan quickly rushed towards the foal insect. The foal insect wasn't too far away, so it didn't take much time for the three of them to arrive at the foal insect. Although it was already late at night, the foal insect was still quite lively. The lights were brightly lit, and the disciples in the sect were also cultivating. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 and chatted. With regards to a small sect like the foal insect, Xiao Yao and the other two naturally didn't have much interest in it. To put it bluntly, such a sect couldn't even enter the eyes of the three of them. Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive. After this, we'll make some arrangements and disguise it as the work of other sections. Hidden in the void, Xiao Yao calmly said. Since they had already taken action, they definitely had to leave no one alive. They couldn't be soft-hearted. Otherwise, if news of this spread, it wouldn't be good for the Xiao clan. After all, Xiaoqian still didn't know what was going on. Before Xiaoqian came out of seclusion and left the land of creation, Xiao Yao and the others still had to continue hiding and not expose their identities. Hearing Xiao Yao's words, Xiao Lao and Xiao Luan both nodded in agreement. Then, Xiao Yao took the lead and directly sealed the surrounding space. If not, the people outside would notice what was happening here. With the space sealed, the battle and aura wouldn't spread out. Unless there was someone with a cultivation base higher than Xiao Yao, otherwise, they wouldn't be able to notice what was happening inside. Moreover, on this continent, there weren't many people stronger than Xiao Yao, let alone appearing in such a desolate place. Therefore, Xiao Yao wasn't worried about being exposed. After doing all this, Xiao Yao took the lead and sent a palm strike towards the foal insect below. The surging spiritual energy instantly condensed into a huge palm in the air. It was like a mountain that ruthlessly pressed down on the foal insect. The sudden scene didn't give the foal insect disciples any time to react. Looking at the huge palm descending from the sky, Everyone was stunned. To them, this was simply a scene of the end of the world. They didn't understand that someone could be so strong to such an extent that a single palm strike had such might. At the same time, many experts of the Feng sect sensed Xiao Yao's attack, SSS Feng sect, SSSS Feng sect. At the same time, they sensed Xiao Yao's attack. Feng Lin's Feng's, the Feng S sects. Feng SSSS Feng Feng sect sects S's, SA. Judging from the aura alone, Zhang Kunlun's father knew that the strength of this person was unreasonably strong. Even if the entire Feng Lin sect was mobilized, they wouldn't be able to contend against this person. Therefore, the moment he opened his mouth, he immediately admitted defeat. However, it was obvious that Zhang Kunlun's father's admission of defeat was of no use. The huge spiritual energy palm still ruthlessly slammed down. In an instant, the entire Feng Lin sect became a living hell. Countless disciples were directly extinguished by this palm. Even those who were lucky enough to escape were injured. This was merely the power of a single palm. At the same time, Xiao Luo and Xiao Luan had yet to make their moves. Seeing that his sect was almost destroyed by a single palm strike, Zhang Kunlun's father was furious. However, he could only suppress his anger and come before Xiao Yao and the other two. When he saw the appearance of Xiao Yao and the other two, he was completely stunned. This was because he knew the identity of Xiao Yao and the other two. Back then, when Zhang Kunlun was pestering Xiao Luan, he had secretly investigated Xiao Yao and the other two siblings. Now that he met them, Zhang Kunlun's father said in disbelief, "You guys, seems like sect leader knows us. If that's the case, things will be easier. Today, we are here for one thing, and that is to annihilate the Feng Lin sect." Before Zhang Kunlun's father finished his words, Xiao Yao directly interrupted. Feeling the powerful aura from Xiao Yao, Zhang Kunlun's father felt that it was extremely surreal. How could she be so strong? He couldn't determine the exact cultivation base of Xiao Yao and the other three because the difference in strength was too great. However, Zhang Kunlun's father was certain that these three young men were godlike existences that he and the entire Feng Lin sect couldn't resist. It was laughable that his son wanted to pursue Xiao Luan. How could such a person take a liking to a mere young sect leader of the Feng Lin sect? Thinking of his son, Zhang Kunlun's father suddenly realized that Xiao Yao and the other two siblings had personally come to the Feng Lin sect. Today, Zhang Kunlun even went to the Xiao clan, but there wasn't any trace of his son. In that case, the answer was obvious. Zhang Kunlun was definitely dead. Thinking of this, Zhang Kunlun's father asked with a gloomy expression, "My son is dead?" "That's right. Originally, our Xiao clan didn't want to offend the Feng Lin sect. But we had no choice. Zhang Kunlun kept pressuring us and we could only take action." "Ah, so that's the case. So that's the case. Previously, I still felt that it was strange. Your Xiao clan is just an outsider, but you guys were able to gain a foothold in the city overnight. So it turns out that you guys were hiding your strength. The Xiao clan suddenly appeared here. This was something that everyone knew. Moreover, the Xiao clan gained a foothold in the city overnight, causing the other major clans to not dare to offend them. Of course, the Xiao clan usually kept a low profile and tried their best not to have any disputes with other major clans. Therefore, the situation was considered stable. But now that he thought about it, the Xiao clan was indeed very mysterious. No one knew the origin of this group of people, and no one would have thought that the Xiao clan was actually so powerful. Just 3 of the younger generation had such powerful strength, not to mention the older generation. Who exactly are you guys? Zhang Kunlun's father questioned angrily. The origin of the Xiao clan was definitely not simple. To this, Xiao Yao naturally wouldn't answer. She only shook her head and said, "No comment." "All right, sect leader, you can be on your way. Your son is still waiting for you." After saying that, Xiao Yao directly made her move. Although Zhang Kunlun's father was in the Sky Realm, he still didn't have the strength to fight back in front of Xiao Yao. Xiao Yao casually pointed out a finger. Zhang Kunlun's father wanted to resist, but unfortunately, everything he did was just a joke in Xiao Yao's eyes. His defense was as weak as a piece of paper. Just like his son, Zhang Kunlun was also shrouded in a dense aura of death. Until this moment, Zhang Kunlun finally understood what kind of existence he and his son had provoked. Back then, when Zhang Kunlun said that he had his eyes on Xiao Luan, he didn't stop him and allowed Zhang Kunlun to pester him. But now, because of this matter, the entire Feng Lin sect was in trouble. If he knew that this would be the outcome, he wouldn't have let his son provoke Xiao Luan. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2855. Zhang Kunlun's father regretted it at the last moment, but unfortunately, it was all too late. As Xiao Yao's attack landed, Zhang Kunlun's father was killed without any resistance. Zhang Kunlun's father regretted it at the last moment, but unfortunately, it was all too late. As Xiao Yao's attack landed, Zhang Kunlun's father was killed without any resistance. Even the sect master was killed with a single finger. The remaining disciples and elders of the Feng Lin sect were all scared out of their wits. They wanted to escape frantically, but unfortunately, the surrounding space had long been sealed by Xiao Yao. There was no way for them to escape at all. After killing Zhang Kunlun's father, Xiao Yao said to Xiao Lao and Xiao Luan, "Hurry up or something might happen." Destroying a small Feng Lin sect was naturally not a big deal to Xiao Yao and the rest. Hearing that, Xiao Lao and Xiao Luan nodded. However, just as the two of them were about to make a move, Xiao Yao's restriction was actually broken by someone. Sensing that the surrounding space restriction had been broken, Xiao Yao's expression changed. This was because ordinary people had no way of breaking her restriction, unless there was someone with a higher cultivation base. At the thought of an expert appearing here, Xiao Yao's expression changed drastically. After all, this wasn't good news. Moreover, the news of the Feng Lin sect's destruction couldn't be spread out. Otherwise, there would be a great risk of their identities being exposed. The sudden change caught Xiao Yao off guard. At the same time, after the restriction was broken, a black-clothed middle-aged man appeared before Xiao Yao and the rest. His gaze locked onto Xiao Yao's group as he spoke calmly. "Wantonly killing. Who are the three of you?" The middle-aged man obviously sensed the existence of Xiao Yao's group at the first moment. When Xiao Yao's group looked at the middle-aged man, their expressions instantly turned grave. This was because judging from the middle-aged man's aura, he was an Ancestor Realm expert. An Ancestor Realm expert had actually appeared in this remote and desolate place. This was obviously not good news. Or perhaps, the matter of the Xiao clan had been exposed. It should be known that in any universe, an Ancestor Realm expert basically represented an Overlord force, because only an Overlord force was worthy of having an Ancestor Realm expert. For example, in the vast thousand domains, all Ancestor Realm experts came from the Sacred Palace, and other forces were not allowed to have an Ancestor Realm expert. But a progenitor just had to appear before him. In that case. Actually, Xiao Yao and the others were wrong. This Ancestor Realm expert didn't come here on purpose but by chance. However, he sensed that something was happening in the Feng Lin sect and thus rushed over. When he saw Xiao Yao and the other two massacring the people of the Feng Lin sect, he chose to make a move. However, his identity was just as Xiao Yao and the others had guessed. He was from the Great Rock Palace, one of the Overlord factions in the Nightmare Awaken world. The Great Rock Palace was an Overlord faction in the Nightmare Awaken world, and it was a faction created by the World Master. Its status was on par with the Sacred Palace in the vast thousand domains. They didn't expect to encounter someone from the Great Rock Palace here. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Xiao Yao was silent for a moment before saying, "Senior, we didn't act on impulse. We were forced to do so." Since they had encountered an expert from the Great Rock Palace, they couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. As such, Xiao Yao stood up and explained. At the same time, Xiao Yao secretly contacted Xiao Qing, Sang Xing, and the others and told them about the appearance of the Great Rock Palace expert. Hearing Xiao Yao's words, the middle-aged man didn't appreciate it and only coldly snorted, "Humph, the truth is right in front of you, and you still want to quibble? This king sees that the three of you aren't very old and have outstanding talent, but you're vicious and merciless. With such temperaments, if you're allowed to grow, you'll definitely become a disaster. It seems that this king will be enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens today." The middle-aged man didn't give Xiao Yao a chance to explain. From how he saw it, with Xiao Yao and the others' strength, they shouldn't have attacked the Feng Lin sect. After all, the Feng Lin sect only had a heaven realm ant, and it couldn't compare to Xiao Yao and the others at all. As for what Xiao Yao said about being forced into a corner, the middle-aged man didn't believe it at all. With the three of them strength, how could the Feng Lin sect pose any threat to them? As such, the middle-aged man was certain that Xiao Yao and the others were bloodthirsty people with evil intentions. Facing the weak, they were merciless. Looking at the Feng Lin sect's disciples, who were either dead or severely injured, it could be seen how savage Xiao Yao and the others were. As the Ancestor Realm expert of the Great Rock Palace and the overlord of the entire Nightmare Awakened world, the middle-aged man felt that he had a duty to uphold justice. Moreover, Xiao Yao and the other two possessed such cultivation and strength at such a young age. As such, their identities were definitely not simple. The middle-aged man was also very interested to know what kind of power existed behind the three of them. If it was said that there was no one behind Xiao Yao and the others, the middle-aged man wouldn't believe it. Without someone nurturing them, the three of them couldn't have grown to such a level. Moreover, the faction that could nurture such geniuses wouldn't be some nameless faction. In short, the middle-aged man was more interested in the faction or person behind Xiao Yao and the others. For some reason, the middle-aged man instinctively felt a trace of threat. Hearing this, Xiao Yao frowned. The middle-aged man was so arbitrary and didn't want to listen to his explanation. Things suddenly became a little complicated. Moreover, at the same time when the middle-aged man appeared, many of the Feng Lin sect's disciples also took advantage of the chaos to flee. Right now, it was already too late for Xiao Yao to chase after them. As the saying went, plans couldn't keep up with changes. Originally, destroying the Feng Lin sect was a small matter, but who would have thought that during this process, Xiao Yao and the others would encounter someone from the Great Rock Palace. Moreover, it was an Ancestor Realm expert. As such, things became very complicated. The situation had completely deviated from expectations. Putting aside the fact that many of the Feng Lin sect's disciples had run away, just this middle-aged man alone wasn't easy to deal with. After all, he was an Ancestor Realm expert. Moreover, once they fought, the situation would be very difficult to control. Xiao Yao didn't want things to get out of hand. Unfortunately, the middle-aged man didn't give Xiao Yao a chance at all. He had already decided to capture Xiao Yao and the others first and then get to know the people behind them. He wanted to know who exactly could nurture geniuses like Xiao Yao and the others. With this thought, the middle-aged man attacked without hesitation. Although Xiao Yao and the others were quite talented, they were still young and couldn't fight against him, who was an Ancestor Realm expert. "Let me capture you first, then we'll talk." As he spoke, he had already attacked Xiao Yao and the others. However, at this moment, an aura that had also reached the Ancestor Realm appeared. Then, Shang appeared before the middle-aged man and blocked his attack. The two Ancestor Realm experts fought. With just one exchange, the middle-aged man's attack was successfully blocked by Shang and the others. He didn't hurt Xiao Yao and the others at all. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 2856. Shang's sudden appearance allowed Xiao Yao and the others to breathe a sigh of relief. However, the current situation was still not optimistic. After all, if the people of Great Rock Palace found out about this, then the existence of the Xiao family would probably be hard to hide. Shang's sudden appearance allowed Xiao Yao and the others to breathe a sigh of relief. However, the current situation was still not optimistic. After all, if the people of Great Rock Palace found out about this, then the existence of the Xiao family would probably be hard to hide. However, now was not the time to worry about this. They had to deal with the middle-aged man in front of them first. Similarly, when the middle-aged man saw Sangxing, his expression changed and a trace of seriousness appeared in his eyes. The sudden appearance of an unfamiliar ancestor realm master was definitely not a small matter for Great Rock Palace. After all, this was an ancestor realm master, not a Dao transformation realm or emperor realm master. One had to know that in any universe, ancestor realm masters could be said to be cornerstone existences. The sudden appearance of an unfamiliar ancestor realm master was obviously enough to pose a threat to Great Rock Palace. "Who are you?" The middle-aged man stared at Sangxing and asked in a deep voice. In the Nightmare Awakened world, any ancestor realm master could only come from one place, and that was Great Rock Palace. After all, if other forces also had ancestor realm masters, they would definitely pose a threat to Great Rock Palace's rule. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Sangxing said calmly, "We have no enmity towards Great Rock Palace, nor do we pose a threat. This is just a misunderstanding. Friend, why don't we sit down and talk?" Sangxing indeed had no intention of becoming enemies with Great Rock Palace. Moreover, they did not appear here because they coveted the Nightmare Awakened world, so it was naturally best not to become enemies with them if possible. However, Sangxing took the initiative to express goodwill, but the middle-aged man did not appreciate it. Therefore, after hearing this, the middle-aged man only coldly replied, "If you want to talk, we can talk in my Great Rock Palace." If he wanted Sangxing to follow him back to Great Rock Palace, Sangxing would definitely not agree. After all, if they went to Great Rock Palace, things would be even more out of control. Moreover, even if Sangxing was an ancestor realm master, he still did not have much ability to protect himself in Great Rock Palace. Not to mention the other ancestor realm masters in Great Rock Palace, just the world master of the Nightmare Awakened world was not someone that Sangxing could deal with. Therefore, it was impossible for him to go to the Great Rock Palace. He rejected it without even thinking. "If I go to Great Rock Palace, would be able, of course, of greats of Great Rock Palace, Sangxing's." Great, Sangxing of Great S of Rock Palace. Of Great, of's Ro, the middle-aged, Sang Roxas. After saying that, the middle-aged man prepared to attack again. An unfamiliar ancestor realm master had suddenly appeared, and Great Rock Palace had not received any information before. This was simply terrifying. Subjectively, they had already regarded Sangxing as an enemy. Facing the middle-aged man's attack, Sangxing naturally would not allow himself to be captured without a fight. He immediately counterattacked, and for a time, the two ancestor realm masters fought fiercely. Xiao Yao and the others could not interfere in the battle between ancestor realm masters. Looking at the fierce battle between Sangxing and the middle-aged man, Xiao Yao was only stunned for a moment before she said to Xiao Lao and Xiao Wan, who were beside her, with a bitter smile, "Looks like things have gotten out of hand this time." No one had expected to encounter an ancestor realm master of Great Rock Palace at this juncture. Originally, everything had been going smoothly, but such an accident had happened. In response, Xiao Wan comforted, "It's not your fault. No one would have expected such an unforeseen event." Indeed, Xiao Yao couldn't be blamed for this matter. He couldn't have foreseen this. However, the middle-aged man was obviously hostile towards them. Once he passed the news back to the Great Rock Palace, things would become even more troublesome at that time. However, if she killed him, the matter would become even more troublesome. The death of an ancestor realm master was definitely not a small matter. Great Rock Palace would definitely investigate to the end. At that time, the Shao clan would definitely be exposed. For a time, they were in a dilemma. However, just as Xiao Yao was pondering, Nan Gongguan suddenly arrived. The middle-aged man, who was in the midst of a fierce battle, sensed the appearance of another ancestor realm master, and a trace of panic and shock appeared in his eyes. The sudden appearance of an unfamiliar ancestor realm master was already inconceivable to the middle-aged man, but now that a second person had appeared, it was even more difficult for him to accept. After all, ancestor realm experts were not cabbages that could be found on the streets. Even in the entire Dark Awaken world, the number of Ancestor Realm experts could be counted with one's fingers. However, 2 Ancestor Realm experts had suddenly appeared in front of him. "Let's attack together and capture him first," Nangongguan did not waste any words and directly said. No matter what, they had to capture this middle-aged man first and delay the Great Rock Palace from finding out about what had happened, giving everyone time to prepare. Hearing Nangongguan's words, Sangxing did not refuse and nodded. Following this, the 2 of them worked together, planning to capture this middle-aged man alive. Fighting 1 against 2, and both of them were Ancestor Realm cultivators, the middle-aged man was naturally not a match for them. "You're not from the Dark Awaken world? Just who are you, and why have you come to the Dark Awaken world?" the middle-aged man furiously asked as he did his best to defend. Seeing 2 Ancestor Realm experts suddenly appear, the middle-aged man quickly realized that they could not be from the Dark Awaken world. After all, breaking through to the Ancestor Realm was incredibly difficult. Moreover, it was impossible for the Great Rock Palace not to have noticed the divine punishment when breaking through to the Ancestor Realm. As such, there was only one explanation, which was that Sangxing and Nangongguan were not from the Dark Awaken world but from another universe. An outsider Ancestor Realm expert was an even greater threat, especially when the outside world was so chaotic. The origin world was madly trying to create a new world, so it was inevitable that people would think about it. However, in response to the middle-aged man's question, Sangxing and Nangongguan did not reply. Now was not the time to talk, they had to capture him first. They definitely could not kill him, because once they did, they would become enemies with the Great Rock Palace. When the World Master of the Dark Awaken world appeared, everyone would be in even more danger. However, capturing him and stalling for time would not be a problem. What Sangxing and Nangongguan needed to do was capture this middle-aged man alive. Seeing that the middle-aged man was gradually suppressed, Sangxing and Nangongguan attacked even more viciously, wanting to end this battle as soon as possible. In response, the middle-aged man was furious, but there was nothing he could do. Fighting 2 people by himself was simply too difficult, so he could only inwardly curse, "Damn it." Please add this to your collection, monthly votes, and recommendations. Chapter 2857. The middle-aged man knew that he had no chance of winning against Sangxing and Nangongguan at the same time. Moreover, he had sustained injuries from the fierce battle, and the result was obvious if he continued to fight. The middle-aged man knew that he had no chance of winning against Sangxing and Nangongguan at the same time. Moreover, he had sustained injuries from the fierce battle, and the result was obvious if he continued to fight. Without much hesitation, the middle-aged man took Nangongguan's attack head-on and instantly retreated, fleeing into the distance without any hesitation. He was trying to escape. Sangxing and Nangongguan naturally wouldn't let him off so easily. They hurriedly chased after him, and the 3 disappeared into the horizon one after another. Xiao Yao and the others couldn't help much as they watched the 3 leave one after another. They looked down at the Fenglin sect below and saw that it was basically destroyed. "Let's go back first," Xiao Yao said in a deep voice. The middle-aged man's matter could only be left at Sangxing and Nangongguan. Xiao Yao and the others couldn't catch up to the 3 of them, and even if they did, they wouldn't be of much help. They might even distract Sangxing and the others, so Xiao Yao suggested that they return first. Xiao Lao and Xiao Luan didn't have any objections, and the 3 of them quickly returned to the city. When they returned to the Xiao clan's mansion, the 3 of them were immediately brought to the main hall by Xiao Qing. Apart from Xiao Qing, there was also a group of Sacred Palace experts in the main hall. "Grandfather," Xiao Qing gloomily called out. Xiao Qing didn't blame the 3 of them, and he only nodded in response. "It's not your fault. No one expected to meet someone from the Great Peng Hall here." Xiao Qing didn't blame Xiao Yao and the others. He waved his hand and gestured for them to take a seat, and the group began to discuss what to do next. However, it didn't take long for Sangxing and Nangongguan to return. Looking at the ugly expressions on their faces, everyone knew that the Ancestor Realm expert from the Great Rock Palace had escaped. Even with the two of them working together, they were still unable to take down the middle-aged man. After a round of pursuit, the middle-aged man finally managed to escape. As a result, the news would soon reach the ears of the Great Rock Palace and the situation would become even more dangerous. Although the crowd felt somewhat regretful about such an outcome, they were no exception. After all, they were all Ancestor Realm experts. Even if Tsang Xing and Nan Dongguan had joined hands, if the other party was determined to escape, the two of them would not be able to do much. Right now, everyone could only discuss what to do next. Since the Great Rock Palace had discovered them, they would definitely rush over here. What should they do then? Should they fight the Great Rock Palace head-on, or should they retreat before the Great Rock Palace's people arrive? But even if they did, where could they go? The outside world was also extremely dangerous. Moreover, the origin world had never stopped capturing them. Once the origin world found any clues, it would be even more dangerous. Compared to the Great Rock Palace, the origin world was clearly more difficult to deal with. In other words, it was impossible to deal with. At the same time, on the largest continent in the Nightmare World, the Great Rock Palace was located. It was already late at night, but the upper echelons of the Great Rock Palace were gathered in the main hall. These people were all Ancestor Realm experts of the Great Rock Palace. There were a total of 8 of them. At this moment, the 8 of them had gathered together, and the old man in the lead spoke with a grave expression. "You should have received the news from Chi Cohen, right?" "Yes, foreign Ancestor Realm experts. This is indeed not a small matter. I just don't know which universe these people came from, and what their goal is. AI, it's already troubled times. The outside world is already in chaos, and now something like this has happened internally. It's really troublesome." Everyone spoke one after another. After the middle-aged man had shaken off Tsang Xing and Nan Dongguan's pursuit, he had immediately reported the situation to the Great Rock Palace. Moreover, he had said that it was suspected that there was more than one foreign Ancestor Realm expert. As such, the Great Rock Palace naturally could not let down their guard. After all, there was more than one Ancestor Realm expert, and the threat to the Great Rock Palace had been infinitely increased. The people spoke one after another, and in the end, it was the old man in the lead who spoke. "All right, we don't know the identities or goals of these foreigners, but we can't let down our guard. I feel that it's best to personally go and take a look. The outside world is already difficult to deal with, and we can't allow any more chaos to occur internally." The old man immediately decided to go and take a look. They could not be careless at all. In response, someone asked, "What if these people really are foreigners? If we can kill them, then kill them." "Killing them is the easiest way to deal with them," the old man replied. Regardless of why these foreigners had entered the Nightmare World, their existence was a threat to the Great Rock Palace. How could they allow outsiders to sleep beside them? If they had the ability, they would directly kill them. As for negotiations, that would only happen when both sides were equal in strength. If the Great Rock Palace had the ability to kill these outsiders, why would they need to negotiate with them? Killing them would save them a lot of trouble. Moreover, according to the information that the middle-aged man had sent back, they could only confirm that there were 2 Ancestor Realm experts. Even though these 2 Ancestor Realm experts were not weak, it was not a problem that the Great Rock Palace could deal with. The old man was more inclined to directly kill them. In response, the others fell silent for a moment, but no one objected. After all, these foreigners were not from the Nightmare World, and leaving them alive would be a hidden danger. Moreover, it was at such a critical juncture. Most importantly, the World Master was not in the Dark Awaken world. In order to deal with the threat of the Origin world, the World Master of the Dark Awaken world had left the Dark Awaken world a long time ago. His goal was to discuss with the World Masters of other universes about how to deal with the Origin world. Of course, what the World Master wanted the most was to find Xiao Chen and the others to form an alliance. After all, it was not a secret that Xiao Chen and the others were forming an alliance, and they had even announced it in order to rope in more universes. The Nightmare World's World Master had naturally heard about this, so his goal was to find Xiao Chen and the others and join the alliance. Everyone present knew about this, but there had been no news from the World Master, so no one knew how the World Master was doing. It was because of this that the old man suggested ending everything. They could not allow the Nightmare World to fall into chaos, or else the situation would become even more uncontrollable. They would first see the other side's strength. If there were only 2 Ancestor Realm experts, they would directly kill them. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 2858. A decision was quickly made. When no one objected, the old man leading the group said, "Since that's the case, let's set off immediately. Tell Qi Kun to wait for us here." A decision was quickly made. When no one objected, the old man leading the group said, "Since that's the case, let's set off immediately. Tell Qi Kun to wait for us here." The group rushed to the small city where the Sacred Palace group was located. At the same time, the Sacred Palace group was arguing endlessly. Some felt that they should retreat for the time being. After all, now wasn't the time to start a conflict with Great Peng Palace. Once a conflict broke out, everyone's identities would be exposed. However, there were also some who felt that even if they retreated, where could they go? Was the outside world safer than here? Perhaps not. Moreover, Great Peng Palace was clearly easier to deal with compared to the origin world. If they had to choose, they would rather face Great Peng Palace than the origin world. Since that was the case, why should they retreat? They wanted to see how Great Peng Palace would react. At the very least, with everyone's strength, they could at least negotiate with Great Peng Palace. There were 2 different opinions, and the differences between them were huge. Moreover, both had their own reasons. After listening to everyone's argument, Sang Xing was the first to speak. "Alright, when will there be a result if we continue arguing like this?" There was no need to mention Sang Xing's prestige in the Sacred Palace. Apart from Xiao Chen, Long Qing, and Xianyuan Ling, Sang Xing's prestige was unparalleled. Therefore, as soon as he spoke, everyone quickly stopped arguing. The scene instantly quieted down. Sang Xing looked at Nangong Guan, Zhou Song, and the others and asked, "What about you guys? What do you think?" Sang Xing was asking Ancestor Realm experts. They were also the cornerstones of the Sacred Palace, so their opinions were obviously very important. Under Sang Xing's questioning, Nangong Guan, Zhou Song, and the others also expressed their opinions. However, their attitudes were somewhat unexpected. Nangong Guan and the others actually felt that there was no need to leave for the time being. Or rather, it was better to wait here for the people from the Great Rock Palace to arrive. After hearing Nangong Guan and the others' answers, Sang Xing asked Xiao Qing, who was sitting at the head of the table. Xiao Chen wasn't present, and Xiao Qing was Xiao Chen's father, so his opinion was naturally very important. "I agree with Nangong Guan's decision." This was Xiao Qing's answer. At this point, everyone already knew the final outcome. There was no need to take any action for the time being. Even if they knew that the experts from Dapeng Palace would appear, there was no need for them to leave. There was no better way to deal with this, and the situation in the outside world was much more dangerous than in the Dark Awakened world. As such, it was better to remain in the Dark Awakened world. Compared to the Origin world, the Great Rock Palace was much easier to deal with. Since even Xiao Qing had spoken, and his thoughts were the same as Sang Xing's, Sang Xing immediately agreed. "Alright, since that's the case, we'll stay. However, we can't let our guard down. Pay attention to the Great Rock Palace's movements at all times. Once the experts from Dapeng Palace appear, report to me immediately." In the end, the people from the Saint Palace chose to stay and wait for the experts from Dapeng Palace to arrive. Although this decision was somewhat unexpected, no one objected. After all, this was the decision of the vice sect leaders and Xiao Qing, so no one had the right to object. They continued to stay in the Xiao family mansion, quietly waiting for the elite practitioners from the Great Rock Palace to arrive. In the next few days, Xiao Yao and the other two were prohibited from leaving the house. With regards to this, the three of them were aware of the current situation and were extremely obedient. "Big brother, what do you think will happen when the people from Dapeng Palace arrive?" Since they had nothing to do, the three siblings gathered together and chatted while drinking. In response to Xiao Lao's question, Xiao Yao took a sip of wine and said, "They'll probably fight first before sitting down to negotiate." "Why do they have to fight first?" Of course they want to see our strength. If we're too strong, Dapeng Palace will negotiate with us to confirm our intentions and purpose. However, if we don't have such strength, Dapeng Palace will not hesitate to destroy us." Xiao Yao's guess was very accurate. She had already guessed Dapeng Palace's decision. However, Xiao Lao did not quite understand. Since they were going to negotiate, why did they have to fight? Xiao Lao clearly did not realize that the basis of negotiation was built on the basis that both parties were equal. In other words, if the difference in strength was too great, then you wouldn't even have the right to negotiate. After all, if you were no longer a threat, why didn't they just destroy you? Why did they have to negotiate with you? One had to know that negotiation meant compromise, and this compromise was a compromise between both parties. No one would be able to gain an advantage. Since I have the strength to destroy you, why should I choose to compromise? Wouldn't it be easier to just destroy you? Xiao Yao understood the crux of the matter very well. Hence, she was certain that Dapeng Palace's arrival would definitely trigger a great battle. In this battle, the Sacred Palace group would have to bring out enough strength to make Dapeng Palace wary in exchange for a chance to negotiate. Seeing that Xiao Lao was still puzzled, Xiao Yao shook her head and said with a smile, "All right, this matter has nothing to do with us. It's a matter for Grandpa and the other progenitor experts. It's useless for us to worry about it." Xiao Qing was also at the progenitor stage, and the most crucial part of this battle was the battle between progenitor stage experts. As for the others, they were not that important. Moreover, Xiao Qing and the others would never allow the three siblings to participate in the battle. This was something that Xiao Yao had already expected. Xiao Yao had already guessed what might happen next. On the other side, in Xiao Qing's residence, Xiao Qing and Jun Wuya were sitting opposite each other. Jun Wuya had been with Xiao Qing and the others all this time. Xiao Qing said helplessly as he looked at Jun Wuya, "It seems that this battle is unavoidable. This is inevitable. Without sufficient strength, there is no possibility of a fair discussion." Jun Wuya said faintly. How could Xiao Qing and Jun Wuya not have thought of something that even Xiao Yao had thought of? Therefore, everyone was already prepared for battle. However, such a battle was indeed unpleasant. After all, it was completely meaningless. Moreover, no one wanted to provoke the Great Rock Palace. If possible, Xiao Qing would definitely want to wait calmly for Xiao Chen to come out of seclusion before making a fuss. However, now that they had been discovered by the people of the Great Rock Palace by a freak combination of factors, they could only fight. It could be said that they were forced into a corner, but they had no choice. Looking at Xiao Qing's helpless expression, Jun Wuya chuckled and said, "All right, we don't have to decide the outcome of this battle. We just need to show the strength that the Great Rock Palace is wary of. Moreover, the Great Rock Palace probably underestimated our numbers. Perhaps we can win without a fight. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 2859. The goal of this battle was not to defeat the Great Rock Palace, but to make the Great Rock Palace wary of them. In any case, the Sacred Palace's goal was not to occupy the awakened netherworld, they only needed a temporary place to stay. Of course, no one could say for sure what would happen in the end. Moreover, it was uncertain whether the Great Rock Palace's World Master would be willing to negotiate with the Sacred Palace. What if the Great Rock Palace insisted on destroying the Sacred Palace's people? It would be very troublesome then. After all, the Sacred Palace's World Master, Xiao Chen, was not here. Therefore, if they fought to the death, the sacred palace actually had no chance of winning. Just the World Master alone was unstoppable. Therefore, Shaoqing and the others still made preparations. If the Great Rock Palace insisted on fighting to the death, the Sacred Palace's people would immediately leave the awakened netherworld. For this reason, Sangxing had arranged for people to draw a temporary teleportation array. If something went wrong, they would immediately be teleported away. It could be said that they were fully prepared. However, who knew what the final outcome would be? Just like that, 3 days passed. During these 3 days, the Sacred Palace's people were still very low-key. Perhaps the other large families in the city were already used to the Sacred Palace's character, so they did not pay much attention. It was rare for the city to be quiet for 3 days. However, on the morning of the 4th day, a terrifying pressure suddenly descended on the small city. There were a total of 9 pressures, each representing an ancestor realm expert of the Great Rock Palace. They did not have the slightest intention of underestimating the Sacred Palace's people. This time, except for the Great Rock Palace's World Master, all the Ancestor Realm experts were present to deal with the Sacred Palace's people. The Sacred Palace's people naturally sensed the terrifying pressure descending. In fact, the Sacred Palace's people had already received the news. At this moment, in the main hall, Shaoqing, Junwuya, Sangxing, Nangong Guan, and the other Sacred Palace Ancestor Realm experts were also gathered. There were as many as 8 of them. Of course, this was not all the Ancestor Realm experts of the Sacred Palace. After all, after so many years of development, the Sacred Palace's strength was actually far greater than the Great Rock Palace's. However, they were scattered this time, so only Shaoqing, Junwuya, and the others were present. Junwuya, who was sitting on the main seat, chuckled softly as he sensed the 9 waves of pressure coming from the sky. They're here. At the same time, following the arrival of the 9 ancestor stage experts from the Great Rock Hall, the small city, which was originally located in a remote area, instantly turned into an uproar. The experts from the various large clans rose into the sky one after another. Their faces were filled with horror as they looked at the 9 figures in the sky. Given their strength, it was naturally impossible for them to come into contact with an ancestor stage expert, much less know how frightening an ancestor stage expert was. However, it was not difficult to determine from the pressure emitted by them that any one of the 9 people who had suddenly appeared could easily destroy them. That was why everyone was so terrified. What was the purpose of such a powerful cultivator coming here? After all, there shouldn't be anything in this small city that could pique the interest of these experts. Seniors, may I know? Despite the fear in his heart, someone mustered the courage to step forward and ask. However, before this person could finish his words, one of the ancestor stage experts from the Great Rock Hall interrupted him. Scram, this has nothing to do with you. As he spoke, he casually threw out a token. Upon seeing this token, the person was stunned because this token belonged to an elder of the Great Rock Hall. There were only 9 elders of the Great Rock Hall, and all of them were at the ancestor stage. They were famous figures in the entire nightmare world, and there were exactly 9 of them here. For a moment, everyone present was stunned on the spot as if they had been struck by lightning. The 9 elders of the Great Rock Hall had arrived at the same time? What was going on? They, who had always lived in this remote area, had never seen such a scene before. Not to mention elders, even ordinary disciples of the Great Rock Hall would find it difficult to come into contact with them. But now, the 9 elders of the Great Rock Hall were standing right in front of them. For a moment, everyone felt as if they were in a dream. However, at this moment, from the Xiao family's mansion, auras that were not weaker than the 9 elders soared into the sky one after another. In the end, there were 8 of them. At this moment, everyone was even more shocked. The Xiao family that had suddenly appeared had so many experts. Moreover, judging from their auras, they could actually stand up to the 9 elders. They were shocked by the Xiao family's strength, but the 9 elders' expressions were grave because they sensed the auras of 8 ancestor stage experts. At the beginning, the information that Qi Kun had sent back said that there were only 2 ancestor stage experts, but now it seemed that this was completely wrong. There were not only 2, but 8. 8 ancestor stage experts. This was already enough to topple the entire nightmare world. Even the Great Rock Hall did not dare to say that they could win, not to mention that the World Lord was not in the nightmare world. The situation was completely different from what the Great Rock Hall had expected. It could even be said that the difference was like heaven and earth. While the 9 elders were shocked, Xiao Qing and the others appeared in the sky one after another, looking at the 9 elders of the Great Rock Hall. Seeing Xiao Qing's appearance, the patriarchs of the other large families in the city were stunned. The Xiao family's patriarch was actually so strong? Then, before, they had always thought that the Xiao family's strength was only on par with theirs. If it wasn't for the fact that the Xiao family had never fought or robbed and did not harm their interests, the other large families might have joined forces to chase the Xiao family out. But who would have thought that the mysterious Xiao family that suddenly appeared would actually be so powerful? One must know that they were facing the 9 elders of the Great Rock Hall. In an instant, fear and relief flashed through their hearts. Fortunately, they did not make things difficult for the Xiao family, or the consequences would be severe. Xiao Qing did not care about the feelings of the large families in the city. From the very beginning, he had not placed them in his eyes. To put it bluntly, these people were not on the same level as Xiao Qing. At this moment, Xiao Qing's group of 8 indifferently looked at Qi Kun's group. In the end, Jun Wuya's gaze met with the old man's, and a trace of surprise flashed through their eyes. In the end, it was Jun Wuya who spoke. We have no intention of becoming enemies with the Great Rock Hall. If we can sit down and talk, I feel that we can resolve many misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? Your Excellency and the others have secretly snuck into the nightmare world with unclear intentions. Could it be that you can just say that it's a misunderstanding? Hearing this, the old man said. Although the appearance of Jun Wuya and the others had completely disrupted the Great Rock Hall's plan, it was not to the point where they would panic. Therefore, the old man's attitude was still very unyielding. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2860. The Great Rock Palace had indeed not expected 8 ancestor experts. They had originally thought that there would only be 2 ancestor experts. Given the Great Rock Palace's strength, the 9 great elders would definitely be able to kill or even capture the 2 ancestor experts alive. The Great Rock Palace had indeed not expected 8 ancestor experts. They had originally thought that there would only be 2 ancestor experts. Given the Great Rock Palace's strength, the 9 great elders would definitely be able to kill or even capture the 2 ancestor experts alive. However, there were 8 ancestor realm experts on Xiao Qing's side. In this case, the Great Rock Palace did not have absolute confidence in fighting them head-on. Of course, the most important thing was that the World Master of the Nightmare World was not present. If the World Master was present, the situation would be different. Now, they needed to make a choice. Should they insist on fighting or sit down and negotiate? As the old man spoke, Jun Wuya saw his hesitation and spoke at the appropriate time. There's no harm in sitting down and talking. If you can't come to an agreement, you can just attack. Jun Wuya's words had obviously moved the elder from the Great Rock Palace. Given the current situation, starting a battle was indeed not a wise move. After all, it was 8 against 9. Although the Great Rock Palace had the advantage in numbers, the advantage of one person was actually not that great. After thinking for a moment, the old man finally nodded in agreement. All right, but if you don't have a reasonable explanation, this old man guarantees that none of you will be able to leave the nightmare world. Faced with the old man's threat, Jun Wuya chose to ignore it. This was the Great Rock Palace's territory, and the Sacred Palace did not want to become enemies with the Great Rock Palace. He smiled and gestured for them to enter. Following which, the group slowly landed in the Xiao family's mansion. At the same time, Sang Xing personally sealed the space around the Xiao family's mansion. With an ancestor realm expert personally taking action, unless one was also an ancestor realm expert, no one else would be able to approach the Shao family's mansion, let alone eavesdrop on their conversation. Some people still tried to approach the Shao family's mansion, but when they were 10 meters away from it, they found that they could not take another step forward. It was as if something was blocking their path, making it impossible to pass through. Unwilling to give up, he tried several times, but in the end, he was unable to move it at all. He could only helplessly choose to give up. At the same time, after arriving at the main hall, everyone took their seats one after another. Junwuya and the old man sat together at the head of the table. It was obvious that the two of them were in charge of this conversation. After ordering the tea to be brewed, Junwuya took the initiative to say, "We are from the vast thousand domains." Since they wanted to talk, they had to show their sincerity. Therefore, Junwuya did not hide anything and directly revealed their identities. After all, if they did not even reveal their identities to the other party, it was obvious that there would be no progress in this kind of talk. They would only part on bad terms. Junwuya's words stunned the old man at first, then he asked curiously, "Are you from the sacred palace?" He did not expect the old man to know about the sacred palace. Hearing this, Junwuya nodded slightly. Seeing this, the old man's expression became complicated. During this period of time, the world master of the nightmare world had gone out to find the sacred palace's palace master, who was also the world master of the vast thousand domains, Shao Chen. However, he did not expect to meet people from the sacred palace in the nightmare world without any news from the palace master. "Are you really from the sacred palace?" he asked again in disbelief. Junwuya naturally sensed the old man's abnormal behavior, but he still nodded and said, "I have no reason to lie to you about this." In terms of identity, Junwuya indeed had no reason to lie to the Great Rock Palace. After confirming that Junwuya and the others were indeed from the sacred palace, the old man asked again, "What about your palace master? What do you mean by that?" The sudden mention of Shao Chen undoubtedly attracted the attention of Junwuya and the others. Could it be that the Great Rock Palace was on the origin world side? For a moment, Junwuya's gaze became vigilant. If the Great Rock Palace was really on the origin world side, then this battle was really unavoidable, and there was no need to continue talking. The atmosphere instantly became heavy, and the old man quickly reacted. He knew that Junwuya and the others had misunderstood him, so he hurriedly added, "I didn't mean that. My Great Rock Palace is not from the origin world. On the contrary, our Great Rock Palace's view of the new world is the same as the sacred palace's. The reason why we asked about the sacred palace's palace master is because our palace master intends to join the alliance. That's why we asked." After the old man's explanation, the atmosphere eased a little. However, Junwuya and the others did not dare to completely wake up. Afterward, both sides began to probe each other, and in the process, many things were resolved. First, the Great Rock Palace's palace master was currently searching for Shao Chen's whereabouts, hoping to join the alliance. However, the old man did not tell Junwuya and the others that the palace master was not in the nightmare world. After all, this was a matter of great importance, and he could not casually reveal it. On the other side, Junwuya and the others only said that Shao Chen was currently in closed-door cultivation, and the reason they had come to the nightmare world was to wait for Shao Chen to enter closed-door cultivation. After Shao Chen came out of closed-door cultivation, everyone would gather again, and at that time, the Great Rock Palace would be able to join the alliance. However, because Shao Chen was currently in closed-door cultivation, the alliance had temporarily split up. During this period of time, they would need to hide in the nightmare world to avoid being discovered by the origin world. They also did not reveal that Shao Chen and the others had gone to the creation grounds, but they did reveal their purpose for coming. Some were true, some were false, and the Great Rock Palace did not know what was going on. Both sides continued to probe each other like this, but after a while, the old man's attitude had indeed changed. This was because Junwuya had said that they would only hide for a while and would not interfere with the matters of the nightmare world or the Great Rock Palace. Before, they had been forced into the Fenglin sex matter. They told the old man about the phone lens sex matter. There was no need to hide anything, as they had no other choice. Hearing Junhui's words, the old man fell silent for a moment before saying, "So it's like that. That's how it is. If the phone lens sect hadn't pressured us step by step, we wouldn't have done this. In the coming period of time, we might need to hide here, so I hope you can help us. It would be best if they could come to an agreement." Moreover, after knowing that they were from the Holy Palace, the old man was not as hostile as before, and this was the same for the other Ancestor Realm experts of the Great Rock Palace. From the 9 people's reactions, the old man's words were most likely true. They indeed wanted to join the alliance, so they naturally had a good impression of the Holy Palace. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 2861. They originally wanted to join the alliance created by Xiao Chen and fight against the Origin World together. However, after learning that Junhuia and the others were from the Sacred Palace, the 9 elders of the Great Rock Palace changed their attitudes to varying degrees. In the end, after Junhui's explanation and request, the elder did not make things difficult for them and agreed to let them continue to hide here. Of course, the prerequisite was that Junhuia promised not to interfere with the matters of the Great Rock Palace and the Great Rock World. Moreover, if they encountered matters similar to the phone lens sect in the future, they had to inform the Great Rock Palace in advance. They could not directly destroy the phone lens sect like they did this time. Junhuia naturally agreed without hesitation. After all, this was not a difficult matter. It could even be said that if they had contacted the people of the Great Rock Palace last time, they would not have had to do it themselves. They had reached an agreement, and this was all thanks to Xiao Chen's reputation. After all, Xiao Chen, Lin Yun, and the others were the first to stand up against the Origin World. This greatly increased their reputation, especially Xiao Chen. He was recognized by many world lords, and even the Great Thousand World and the Sacred Palace became famous. If it were not for this, the Great Rock Palace Master would not have known about Xiao Chen and even had thoughts of joining the alliance. This was the benefit of reputation. If it were not for Xiao Chen's reputation, this negotiation would not have ended so smoothly. After everything was settled, everyone was in a good mood. Junhuia was even prepared to take out a long time to entertain them. Suddenly, the old man received a letter. After reading the contents of the letter, his face instantly became serious. "What's wrong?" Junhuia asked when he noticed the change in the elder's expression. "The people of the Origin World are here and are not far from the Dark Awakened World. They probably want to attack the Dark Awakened World. The people of the Origin World just had to come at this critical moment." Hearing this, Junhuia was stunned. The Origin World's speed was faster than he had imagined. This was not strange. Recently, his masters had sped up their progress in the New World. Now that they had arrived in the Dark Awakened World, it was not too difficult. For a moment, everyone's mood became heavy. Now that the people of the Origin World had arrived in the Dark Awakened World, there was no point in their previous conversation. After all, once the Dark Awakened World was destroyed, Junhuia and the others could no longer continue to hide. This accident ruined everyone's good mood. However, after a moment of silence, Junhuia said, "We're willing to lend Great Rock Palace a hand." Even if they continued Rock Palace, where could they run to? He might as well give it his all. After all, no egg would remain unbroken when the nest was overturned. Moreover, if he could join forces with the Great Rock Palace, they might be able to resist for a longer period of time. That way, they would have more hope of holding out until Xiao Chen came out of his closed-door training. Junhui's words stunned the elder. He did not expect Junhuia to say such a thing. In response, Junhuia simply said, "We all have a common enemy. Working together is undoubtedly the best choice. Moreover, in this situation, even if we leave the Dark Awakened World, where can we go? It's better to work together. Perhaps we'll have a chance to survive. As long as we can hold on until our palace master comes out, we'll have a chance to fight." Holding out until Xiaochen came out of isolation was their only hope at the moment, and working together was the best option. Hearing Junwei's words, the elder was slightly surprised. He then stood up and bowed, "Thank you." If Junwei and the others could help, they would naturally be more than happy to do so. The elder had no reason to refuse. After all, the Dark Awakened world was their territory. Once it was destroyed, their fate would be unimaginable. As such, Junwei's help was only beneficial to the Great Rock Palace. "I'll go and contact the palace master," another elder said. Everyone quickly decided to work together. Moreover, because of the sudden change in the situation, there was no need to continue hiding. Thus, after some discussion, Junwei and Xiaoqing decided that everyone would head to the Great Rock Palace. Just as they were about to leave, Xiao Yao and the others heard the news. Xiao Yao sighed helplessly and said, "What troubled times. I wonder how father is doing." Xiaochen was everyone's hope. If Xiaochen could not succeed, then there would be no hope at all. Hearing Xiao Yao's words, Xiao Lao said in a low voice, "Father can definitely do it." They did not need to hide anymore. They headed directly to the Great Rock Palace to fight against the invading Origin world together. The only fortunate thing was that the primogenitors would not personally come this time. After all, there was no need for the primogenitors to personally deal with the various universes. Instead, they would send cultivators who had their emotions and desires forcibly removed. Because they were attacking multiple universes at the same time, the Origin world could not gather all of its forces to deal with the Nightmare Awakened world. This gave everyone a chance to stall for time. Of course, this was only stalling for time. It was almost impossible for them to achieve victory. The Nightmare Awakened world was now in danger. At the same time, Xiaochen and the others were still in closed-door cultivation in the creation ground. Within the boundless sea of blood, Xiaochen's consciousness was already very hazy. He could not feel the passage of time at all. Only the last trace of clarity that he held on to prevented Xiaochen from completely losing consciousness. However, the intense pain in his body did not disappear. It was as if thousands of years had passed. Amidst the intense pain, he was repeatedly tortured, and he did not know when it would end. It could not be said that he was numb. After all, the pain was still difficult for Xiaochen to accept. However, Xiaochen still gritted his teeth and persevered. Little Qing was also paying close attention to Xiaochen and the others. However, it was a pity that so far, 3 of them had already fallen. The 3 world lords were unable to endure the pain and had fainted. Once they lost consciousness, they would never be able to wake up again. When the time came, they would be crushed by that berserk power. There were 3 people, which was one more than the first stage of soul rebirth. This showed how difficult it was to reforge a physical body. Of course, this was because the physical body that Xiaochen and the others needed was not an ordinary physical body. If it were an ordinary physical body, there would be no need to go through so much trouble. Xiaoqing could easily help everyone restore their original physical bodies, and they would not be weak at all. However, if that happened, it would be impossible for Xiaochen and the others to reach the level of the ancient era's living beings. Both the soul and the body were indispensable, and without either, Xiaochen and the others would not be able to succeed in their closed-door cultivation. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 2862. Xiaochen and the rest had reached the final step of their seclusion. This step was crucial to their success. Although Little Qing had been paying attention to Xiaochen and the rest's situation, she had no intention of lending a helping hand. If they could persevere, they would be able to obtain the same strength as the ancient spirits. As for whether they succeeded or not, it would depend on Xiaochen and the rest's abilities. On the other hand, Qin Shuru, Lu Bingning, and the rest's cultivation was going very smoothly. It seemed that they would come out of seclusion earlier than Xiaochen and the rest. However, this was normal. After all, compared to Xiaochen and the rest, it was obviously much easier for Lu Bingning and the rest to break through to the World Lord level. time passed by slowly. After a few days, Lu Bingning, Qin Shuru, and the rest of the girls came out of seclusion successfully. Everyone's cultivation had also reached the World Lord level. With little Qing's help, Lu Bingning and the rest's seclusion this time could be said to be very smooth. Basically, they did not encounter any difficulties and only needed to follow the prescribed order to succeed. The first to come out of seclusion was Gong Nantian, Xianyuan Ling, Long Qing, Lin Yuan, and the rest. However, only one day later, Lu Bingning, Qin Shuru, and the rest of the girls also came out of seclusion successfully. After returning to little Qing's residence from the seclusion place, she learned that Xiao Chen and the rest were still in seclusion. Qin Shuru and the rest of the girls could not see them for the time being. However, compared to Qin Shuru and the rest of the girls, the subordinates of the 5 world lords who had fallen were all in a heavy mood after hearing the news of the fall of their world lords. After all, the fall of their world lords was indeed a huge blow to them. However, this was something that could not be helped. Now, they could only wait quietly for Xiao Chen and the rest to come out of seclusion. However, little Qing did not know when Xiao Chen and the rest would come out of seclusion. At night, Qin Shuru, Flower Fairy, and the rest of the girls gathered together to chat. Suddenly, they talked about Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan. It had been a long time since they entered the land of creation. They did not know how the 3 little guys were doing now. As a mother, who wouldn't miss their children? Moreover, the situation in the outside world was so chaotic right now. Would they encounter any danger? Speaking of this, Qin Shuru and the other girls couldn't calm down. Early the next morning, they took the initiative to look for little Qing and asked if he had any way to find Xiao Yao and the others. Of course I can. You are blood relatives. I can use a secret technique to find their whereabouts. Little Qing agreed without hesitation. After all, this was not a difficult task for him. With Qin Shuru and Fairy of 100 Flowers, he could find out the whereabouts of Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao through some means. Hearing this, Qin Shuru and the other women were very happy and immediately offered a drop of their blood essence. Through the blood essence, little Qing was able to locate Xiao Yao and the others. Apocalypse World? Soon, little Qing found Xiao Yao and Xiao Luo's whereabouts. They were in the Nightmare Awaken world. Hearing this, Qin Shuru and 100 Flower Fairy let out a sigh of relief. They knew that Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao had gone to the Apocalypse world, and since they were still in the Apocalypse world, they should be fine. However, at that moment, little Qing slightly frowned. The situation in the Apocalypse world doesn't seem too good. What is it? The people from the Origin world have already started to attack the Apocalypse world. After finding Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao, little Qing found out about the situation in the Apocalypse world. Facing the Origin world's attack, the Apocalypse world was indeed in a bad situation. Even though it had not been broken through, it was in great danger. After hearing little Qing's words, Zhao Fu's relaxed mood became tense again. The Origin world was already attacking the Nightmare Awaken world. If that was the case, then Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others, it's definitely dangerous. For a time, all of them were slightly worried. After all, once they were captured by the Origin world, then the consequences were obvious. At the very least, their emotions and desires would be extracted, and they would become emotionless walking corpses. Their hearts clenched, and the women looked at each other. Following this, Qin Shuru said, "No, I have to go to the Apocalypse world." The situation in the Apocalypse world was critical, so Qin Shuru immediately prepared to go there. Hearing this, Fairy of 100 Flowers, Guling Yao, Tianyu, and Beautiful Red did not refuse. Seeing this, little Qing asked, "Are you sure?" The situation in the Apocalypse world was indeed not good. Hearing little Qing's question, the women nodded, "I'm sure." Seeing this, little Qing nodded, "I can send you there, but be careful and don't attract the attention of the primogenitors. Xiao Chen and the others should be coming out of closed-door cultivation soon, so we just need to stall for time." A mere Apocalypse world naturally did not know that the primogenitors had taken action. Now that Qin Shuru and the others had World Lord cultivation, they would not be too much of a threat. Of course, that was on the premise that they did not attract the attention of the primogenitors. Hearing little Qing's words, Qin Shuru and the others nodded. They knew the severity of the situation and understood what they had to do, so they did not try to be brave. There were many experts from the Divine Palace in the Apocalypse world, and they could not afford to lose them. It was understandable for them to go and provide reinforcements. Little Qing told the women to go and make preparations, and Little Qing could construct a spatial passageway to the Apocalypse world, but it would take some time. While Little Qing was busy constructing the spatial passageway, Xian Yuan Ling and Long Qing heard that Qin Shuru and the others were going to the Apocalypse world, so they immediately asked the women to go with them. "Let's go together. I wonder how strong the primordial world is." Facing Xian Yuan Ling and Long Qing's request, Qin Shuru and the others naturally had no reason to refuse. Moreover, even though they had both broken through to the World Lord realm, Xian Yuan Ling and Long Qing were evidently stronger than Qin Shuru and the others. Apart from Xian Yuan Ling and Long Qing, Lu Bingning, Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others all expressed their willingness to go as well. However, there was no point in having so many people go to the Apocalypse world. With Qin Shuru and the others, as well as Xian Yuan Ling and Long Qing, 7 world lords were enough to deal with matters in the Apocalypse world. Right now, the most important thing was to wait for Xiao Chen and the others to come out of closed-door cultivation. Only then would the battle in the primordial world truly begin, so there was no need for them to reveal themselves so early. It was enough for Qin Shuru and 100 Flower Fairy to go to the Apocalypse world first, and there was no point for anyone else to go. In response, no one insisted. After all, the bigger picture was more important. The matter was quickly decided, and Little Qing did not spend too much time constructing the spatial passageway that led directly to the Apocalypse world. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2863. After the spatial channel was constructed, Qin Shuru and the others planned to leave. There was nothing to say, as the Dark Awakened world was not the main battlefield. Currently, the Origin world was attacking more than just the Dark Awakened world. After the spatial channel was constructed, Qin Shuru and the others planned to leave. There was nothing to say, as the Dark Awakened world was not the main battlefield. Currently, the Origin world was attacking more than just the Dark Awakened world. Be careful, Lu Bingning and the others came to send them off. In response, Qin Shuru and 100 Flower Fairy nodded and said, "Don't worry, we know what's important." After a simple farewell, Qin Shuru and the others stepped into the spatial channel. This spatial channel could directly send Qin Shuru and the others to the Dark Awakened world. Only Little Qing had such an ability. As a spirit of heaven and earth, it wasn't difficult for her to construct a spatial passage that crossed the universe. However, such a spatial passage wasn't stable. Of course, it wasn't a problem for the current Qin Shuru and the others. With the cultivation of a world lord, Qin Shuru and the others were much stronger than before. They would definitely be able to resist the space storms in the spatial channel, so they did not need to worry too much. Qin Shuru and the others left. Within the Dark Awakened world, the battle was incredibly intense. Even with the help of Junwuya, Xiao Qing, and the others, the Great Rock Palace still found it difficult to hold on against the Origin world's experts. Fortunately, the Origin world had only sent one world lord to the Dark Awakened world. Otherwise, the Great Rock Palace might not have been able to hold on. At that moment, within the Great Rock Palace's main palace, Junwuya, Xiao Qing, the 9 elders, and the palace master were all present. The battle had been intense for a while. Even though the Great Rock Palace had bitterly held on and did not allow the Origin world's people to enter the Dark Awakened world, as time passed, the battle became more and more difficult. The Great Rock Palace's palace master was called Yin Peng, and after receiving the message, he immediately rushed back to the Nightmare Awakened world. It was because of him that the Nightmare Awakened world was able to resist the Origin world's attack. The only good news was that there was only one world master in the origin world. However, no one knew how long this situation would last. After all, everyone knew that there was more than one world master in the origin world. Once the origin world sent another world lord, it would be incredibly difficult for Yin Peng to fight two world lords by himself. Once a world lord was defeated, it would be a disaster for the Nightmare Awakened world. After all, apart from Yin Peng, no one else could stop a world lord. The casualties are getting heavier and heavier. On the main seat, Yin Peng sighed softly. Yin Peng had the appearance of a young man and could not be considered handsome. However, as a world master, he naturally had an extraordinary bearing. Yin Peng was naturally extremely grateful to Shao Qing and the others for their help. During this period of intense battle, Shao Qing and the others had indeed helped a lot. Otherwise, with the Great Rock Palace's strength alone, they would have been defeated long ago and would not have been able to hold on until now. However, Yin Peng was not happy about the current situation at all. This was especially so because the Great Rock Palace had suffered heavy losses during this period of time. On the origin world side, those who had their emotions and desires extracted were like mad demons and did not fear death at all. Shao Qing, Junwuya, when will brother Shao Qing come out of seclusion? Yin Peng sighed and turned to look at Junwuya and the others as he asked. Right now, Yin Peng's only hope was Shao Qing. However, Shao Qing had been in seclusion this entire time, and no one knew when he would come out. This made them feel quite uncomfortable. If they could not hold on until Shao Qing came out of seclusion, it was easy to imagine what would happen to the Nightmare Awakened world. In response, Junwuya said somewhat helplessly, "We don't know the exact time either." Junwuya and the others indeed did not know when Shao Qing would come out of seclusion. In fact, Junwuya and the others did not know what Shao Qing's situation was. Hearing this, even though Yin Peng felt a bit disappointed, there was nothing he could do. However, he did not think that Shao Qing would just sit by and do nothing. Once Shao Qing came out of seclusion and learned about the Nightmare Awakened world, Yin Peng was certain that Shao Qing would come. After all, Shao Qing's children, father, and mother were all in the Nightmare Awakened world. Even if Shao Qing did not want to help the Great Rock Palace, he would not disregard his family. Yin Peng was quite confident about this. The only thing he had to consider was when Shao Qing would come out of seclusion and whether the Great Rock Palace would be able to hold on until Shao Qing arrived. Yin Peng thought to himself, but he could not come up with any good ideas. After thinking about it, there was only one path, which was to fight to the death and do their best to hold on until the last moment. As for whether or not they would be able to make it in time, that was not something Yin Peng could decide. Alright, everyone go and rest. Keep a close eye on the origin world and report to me immediately if anything happens. Yin Peng waved his hand and gestured for everyone to go and rest. Everyone was very tired after the continuous battles, and it was rare for them to rest. It was best to use this time to adjust their condition. Who knew when the origin world would attack again? The night passed peacefully, but the origin world launched another attack early in the morning of the next day. Yin Peng and the others were already used to this because they had experienced such an attack countless times recently. Therefore, they quickly reacted. At the entrance of the Nightmare Awakened world, Yin Peng, Shao Qing, Junwuya, Sang Xing, and the many experts from the Great Rock Palace reacted immediately. They soared into the sky and immediately engaged in a fierce battle with the people from the origin world. There was no nonsense. The cultivators from the origin world were emotionless walking corpses. They only knew how to carry out the orders of their primogenitors. The fierce battle between the two sides was still extremely tragic. At this moment, 3 middle-aged men appeared in front of Yin Peng. Facing these 3 middle-aged men, Yin Peng's expression was extremely grave. Yesterday, there was only one world lord guarding the origin world, but early this morning, there were 2 more world lords. Needless to say, these 2 people must have come from other places as reinforcements. All this time, although Yin Peng could not win against a world lord, he would not lose either. However, with the arrival of the origin world's reinforcements, the situation instantly took a turn for the worse. Fighting 1 against 3, Yin Peng's chances of winning were almost zero. On the other side, one of the 3 world lords from the origin world said indifferently, "I underestimated your great rock palace before, but now, Yin Peng, you have no chance. Please collect, vote, recommend." Chapter 2864. The person who spoke was the first world lord who had led the attack on the Nightmare Awakened world. However, he had not expected the Great Rock Palace to be so powerful and to have nearly 20 Ancestor Realm experts. Of course, this person did not know that the Great Rock Palace was not that powerful. If it was not for Shaoqing, Junwuya, and the others' help, perhaps he would have already taken down the Nightmare Awakened world. Even with Yin Peng there, it would not have been of any help. Things had exceeded his expectations, so he had quickly asked for help from the origin world. These 2 world lords had also rushed over to help him. In order to quickly complete the establishment of the new world, the primogenitors had stretched out the battlefront. As such, even though there were many world lords in the origin world, only 2 of them were able to come to the Nightmare Awakened world's aid. Even so, this was already a force that had been squeezed out through gritted teeth. There was nothing they could do about it. After all, the primogenitors had stretched out the battlefront in pursuit of speed. Even so, with 3 world lords, it was enough to take down the Nightmare Awakened world. Only Yin Peng alone could not stop the 3 of them. Hearing this, Yin Peng's expression became extremely grave as he stared at the 3 world lords in front of him. They had all had their emotions and desires extracted, and they only knew to listen to the primogenitor's orders. As such, this battle was unavoidable. Once they fought, Yin Peng knew that he had no chance of winning. However, he had no other choice. Even if he could not win and was killed, he could only give it his all. The others' battles did not change much. For example, Ancestor Realm experts like Junwuya and Shaoqing still had a slight advantage. After all, only 2 world lords had come to help this time. The other forces had not received much help, so the pressure fell on Yin Peng. Yin Peng was under the greatest pressure because he had to face 3 world lords from the origin world. If he was defeated, the 3 world lords would be able to change the entire situation, and Shaoqing and the others would not be able to withstand them at all. Therefore, even though there were only 2 reinforcements from the origin world this time, they were 2 world lords and had completely broken the balance. Yin Peng couldn't do anything about it. Even if he searched the entire Nightmare Awakened world, he would not be able to find a second world lord. It was impossible for him to have any helpers, so he could only rely on himself. It was indeed difficult for him to do anything by himself. The origin world's reinforcements had come much faster than he had expected. He had thought that he could last until Shaoqing came out of seclusion, but now, it seemed that he would not be able to wait. Not only Yin Peng, but even Shaoqing, Junwuya, and the others in the distance were extremely solemn at that moment. They could naturally see how terrible the current situation was, but they were helpless in the face of a battle at the level of a world lord. They couldn't interfere at all and could only worry in their hearts. Under everyone's gaze, the 3 world lords from the origin world chose to attack and did not give Yin Peng any chance to retaliate. The 3 of them joined forces and attacked Yin Peng. Facing the 3 world lords, Yin Peng fought back with all his might, but the result did not change. After just a few moves, Yin Peng was completely suppressed. Although he might be able to hold on for a while, the final result was still very difficult to change. Shaoqing, find a chance to leave. Take Yao Er and Luo Er with you, Junwuya said to Shaoqing while fighting. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this battle was bound to be lost. Once Yin Peng was killed, what awaited everyone would be a complete defeat. Who could stop 3 world lords? Therefore, Junwuya immediately made a choice. He told Shaoqing to find a chance to leave the battlefield and take Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, Xiao Luan, and the others with him. No matter what, it would be best if they had a chance to escape. You, don't talk nonsense. No matter what, we have to protect Yao Er and Luo Er. Our lives are not important. If we protect them, we will have a chance when Xiaochen comes out of seclusion. Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others had to be protected. They represented the future of the Saint Palace. In this situation, it was impossible for everyone to leave together. Therefore, saving Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao was the last resort. No matter what, they had to protect Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and of course, Bai Ruyue. After being interrupted by Junwuya, Xiao Qing did not say anything. He knew what Junwuya meant. In the end, they did not make it in time for Xiaochen to come out of seclusion. Now that the nightmare world could not be saved, they had to make some sacrifices. Otherwise, everyone would be killed here. Seeing that Xiao Qing didn't have any objections, Yin Peng, who was facing the three world lords on the other side, was also injured. He spat out a mouthful of blood and couldn't help but take a few steps back from the impact. Yin Peng, you have no chance of winning this time. Surrender. That way, you will have a quick death. When the time comes, you will be loyal to the primogenitor. The outcome was clear. Even if Yin Peng still had the strength to fight, so what? The final result could not be changed. Sensing the situation on Yin Peng's side, Junwuya did not waste any words and took the initiative to flash in front of Xiao Qing, blocking his opponent for him. He fought two primogenitor realm experts by himself as he shouted to Xiao Qing. Let's go! Junwuya also did not have much of a chance of winning, but there was no other way. This was the only way to let Xiao Qing leave. Only by letting Xiao Qing leave would Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan have a chance of survival. Hearing Junwuya's words, Xiao Qing knew what it meant if he left. However, in the current situation, he had no choice but to leave. If he insisted on not leaving, then everyone would die here. Even Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao would not be able to escape this calamity. Xiao Qing gritted his teeth and prepared to leave. Saving Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao was now everyone's only goal. However, just as Xiao Qing was about to leave to save Xiao Yao and Xiao Lao, 7 spatial rifts suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Terrifying auras spread out from them. These auras were all at the World Lord level. This sudden change naturally attracted everyone's attention. Even the 3 World Lords from the primogenitor realm looked at the 7 spatial rifts in confusion. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2865. 7 spatial cracks had suddenly appeared, and each of them had the aura of a World Lord. This meant that 7 more World Lords had appeared. They didn't know the identities of these 7 people, but everyone's attention was attracted by this sudden change, including Yin Peng and the 3 World Lords of the origin world. Yin Peng's heart sank. He thought that they were reinforcements from the origin world. After all, apart from the origin world, Yin Peng could not think of anyone else who could have such a large number of World Lords. As for the possibility that they were reinforcements from other universes, Yin Peng did not even consider that possibility. What kind of joke was this? Which universe could send out 7 World Lords at once? Moreover, it was impossible for 7 more World Lords from other universes to come and help him. This was even more impossible. As such, Yin Peng immediately thought that the 7 people who had suddenly appeared were reinforcements from the origin world. Facing the World Lords, it was already difficult for him to fight back. Now that there were 7 more people, facing 10 World Lords, Yin Peng was in complete despair. He could not see a trace of hope. While Yin Peng was in despair, the 3 World Lords from the origin world were also quite confused. They knew the current situation of the origin world and knew that it was impossible for them to send out 7 more World Lords. Moreover, there was no need for them to do so. With the 3 of them here, the nightmare world was like a turtle in a jar, and they could easily capture it. The primogenitors did not come, so they could send out 7 more World Lords, right? Moreover, did the primogenitors still have 7 World Lords to send? Since they were not sent by the origin world, who were these 7 people? Everyone had their own thoughts. However, soon, 7 figures appeared from the spatial cracks. When they saw who it was, Xiao Qing and Jun Huiya were stunned. They had never thought that it would be Qin Shiru, 100-Flower Fairy, Xianyuan Ling, and Long Qing. Looks like we made it in time. Looking at the current situation, 100-Flower Fairy said indifferently. The appearance of the 7 world lords changed the situation of the battle. Jun Huiya and the others heaved a sigh of relief. They had been in despair earlier, thinking that these were reinforcements sent by the origin world. If that was the case, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others would be doomed. But now that they saw Qin Shiru, Lu Bingning, and the others, Jun Huiya and the others immediately felt like they had survived a disaster. Although they didn't know why Qin Shiru and the others had broken through to the level of a world lord, it didn't matter because after Qin Shiru and the others appeared, the situation changed again. After Qin Shiru's group of 7 appeared, the origin world, which had the absolute advantage, was beaten back to its original state in just a blink of an eye. It didn't have any advantage at all. As soon as 100-Flower Fairy said that, Xianyuan Ling said from the side. Let's deal with the current battle first. Shiru, 100-Flower, the 5 of you will deal with the 3 world lords. Leave the rest to me and second sister. Xianyuan Ling said. Qin Shiru and the others nodded in response. With their current strength, it wouldn't be a problem for them to deal with the 3 world lords. As for Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing, if no one stopped them, they could definitely deal a devastating blow to the origin world, including the ancestor realm experts of the origin world. Qin Shiru and the others flashed at the same time and came to Yin Peng's side. Qin Shiru looked at the 3 world lords of the origin world in front of him and said indifferently. Can you still fight? These words were directed at Yin Peng. Upon hearing these words, Yin Peng, who came back to his senses, quickly realized that these 7 people weren't from the origin world but were on their side. He was overjoyed. With the help of these 7 world lords, they would definitely win this battle. Yes, but you guys are. Although Yin Peng was excited, he was still curious about the identity of Qin Shiru and the others. Qin Shiru didn't hide this from him. We are Xiao Chen's wives. Xiao Chen's wives. Upon hearing this, Yin Peng was shocked. Xiao Chen was a world lord of the Great Thousand World, but why were his wives also at the world lord level? This was simply beyond Yin Peng's understanding. How could a universe give birth to so many world lords? Of course, Yin Peng hadn't come into contact with the land of creation. Perhaps he hadn't even heard of it, so he naturally didn't know the secrets of the land of creation. He also didn't know that such a place existed in this world. His heart was filled with shock and doubt, but now was obviously not the time to talk about this. After saying that, Qin Shiru didn't wait for Yin Peng's reply and immediately attacked. Let's get rid of them first. We'll talk about it later. Qin Shiru and the other 4 women had already attacked. In the face of the 5 people's attacks, the 3 world lords of the origin world had no choice but to fight back. Seeing this, Yin Peng, who was a step late, also attacked. 6 against 3. In an instant, the situation was completely reversed. The head-on confrontation that had been suppressed previously could be said to be completely exalted now. He joined forces with Tianyu to deal with one of the world lords. Both of them didn't show any mercy, and the world lord of the origin world couldn't withstand the joint attack of the 2. He couldn't find any chance to fight back at all. With overflowing killing intent in her eyes, Tianyu said coldly. Kill him if you have the chance. A world lord wasn't that easy to kill, but now that the 2 of them had joined forces, there was still a chance. Tianyu certainly didn't have a good impression of the people of the origin world. If she had the chance, she would definitely kill them. Yin Peng didn't have any objection to this. He also didn't have a good impression of the origin world. Naturally, he wouldn't hesitate to kill if he could. The world lord of the origin world held on bitterly, and the other 2 weren't in a good situation either. Facing the joint attack of Qin Shiru, 100-Flower Fairy, and the other 3 women, they were also completely suppressed. The chaotic battle between the 8 world lords was so powerful that it felt like it could destroy the heavens and the earth. Qinshuru and the other 4 women had completely suppressed the 3 world lords of the origin world. Xian Yuanling and Long Qing, who had no one to stop them, started a massacre of the Ancestor Realm experts of the origin world. Although there were more than a dozen Ancestor Realm experts in the origin world, they weren't much of an effect in front of Xian Yuanling and Long Qing. The result of more than a dozen Ancestor Realm experts against 2 world lords was actually needless to say. The gap between the 2 sides couldn't be made up with numbers. If there were more than 50 Ancestor Realm experts in the origin world, they might be able to fight against Xian Yuanling and Long Qing. Unfortunately, they didn't have that. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2866. Xian Yuanling and Long Qing mercilessly slaughtered the origin world's Ancestor Realm masters. As a result, Jun Wuya, Shao Qing, and the others, who were originally fighting these Ancestor Realm masters, were free to deal with the Emperor Realm cultivators below. This was a chain reaction. Because of the appearance of Qinshuru's group of 7, the origin world side quickly began to crumble. They didn't put up any effective resistance at all and were already showing signs of defeat. However, this was obviously not the most important thing. Right now, the battle between Qinshuru, Yin Peng, and the others in the 3 origin world masters was the most important thing. 6 against 3, there was no need to doubt the outcome. However, if they could kill the 3 origin world masters, it would definitely be a great victory. Although the origin realm could afford the loss of 3 world lords, it would still be painful for the primordial realm. After all, even in the origin world, there weren't many origin world masters. Losing 3 of them was a real loss. Qinshuru and the other women obviously understood this, so they didn't hold back at all against the 3 origin world masters. They were aiming to kill them. The situation was basically set. The origin world's defeat was certain, unless other reinforcements from the origin world could arrive in time. However, this was also the most awkward thing for the origin world now because they really didn't have any more forces to support the Nightmare Awaken world. Originally, the origin world naturally wouldn't waste too much battle power on a universe that wasn't very strong. However, with the appearance of Shao Qing, Jun Wuya, and now Qinshuru and 100 Flower Fairy, all of the origin world's plans were completely ruined. Without reinforcements, the origin world would definitely lose this battle, and it would be wishful thinking to take down the Nightmare Awaken world. 2 against 1, Qinshuru and Gu Lingyao firmly held the advantage. They stabbed out with their Jiani swords. Facing Qinshuru's attack, the origin world master had no choice but to dodge. He took a step back and used spatial shrink, instantly widening the distance between him and Qinshuru. However, at this moment, Gu Lingyao didn't give the others any time to breathe. His figure flashed, and he appeared directly behind the origin world master, slamming out his palm. The origin world master had no time to react at all. It was impossible to dodge at this moment. This was the disadvantage of facing 2 people at the same time. If the origin world master was facing Qinshuru alone, his dodging would have been extremely precise. Qinshuru's sword wouldn't have been able to injure him at all. However, 2 against 1 was different. Although the origin world master had dodged Qinshuru's attack, he had no way of dodging Gu Lingyao's attack. On the other hand, Gu Lingyao and Qinshuru's cooperation could be said to be incomparably exquisite. After living together for so many years, the 2 women's tacit understanding was incomparable to ordinary people. When they worked together, they complemented each other even more. Seeing Gu Lingyao's palm strike coming at him, the origin world master had no way of dodging. He could only choose to take the palm strike head-on. The palm strike hit the origin world master's back hard. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his body couldn't help but fly forward. At the same time, Qinshuru had already expected this outcome. The long sword in his hand had already made a second attack, and it went straight for the origin world master. At first glance, it looked like the origin world master had willingly collided with the tip of Qinshuru's sword. However, it was obviously not voluntary. Seeing the dense power of Chinshuru's sword, the Origin World Master would definitely be severely injured if he was hit. At the critical moment, the Origin World Master forcibly twisted his body. Although he forcibly avoided his vital organs, he was still hit by Chinshuru's sword. Although Chinshuru didn't have Shao Chen's sword realm, he had already cultivated his sword realm to perfection after so many years. Even though the Origin World Master had tried his best to avoid his vital organs, his body was still pierced by the sword. Blood spurted out continuously. What made him even more uncomfortable was that Gu Lingyao had come at this time. The two women's cooperation was exquisite, and they didn't give him any chance to catch his breath. Faced with such a situation, the Origin World Master could only brace himself to resist even though his aura was already somewhat weak. However, he had already begun to think of a way to escape in his heart. He also transmitted his voice to the other two. Let's retreat. There's no hope of winning. These so-called new martialists had only been deprived of their 7 emotions and 6 desires, but it didn't mean that they were fools. In addition to not having lust, they could also think like normal people. They weren't puppets that only knew how to fight. Therefore, even though he knew that he was no match for them, he took the initiative to suggest a retreat. In the current situation, there was no chance at all. Chinshuru's 5 women and Yin Peng's strength had completely crushed them. They weren't at the same level at all. The disadvantage in terms of numbers was too great. If this continued, the 3 of them would probably die here. Don't think that the World Lords were truly immortal. Even the primogenitors weren't truly immortal. However, the primogenitors were too powerful compared to this world. Basically, there wasn't much power that could kill them. However, if Little Qing took action, the primogenitors could still be killed. Especially in a one-on-one situation, Little Qing could definitely kill the primogenitors. To put it bluntly, the so-called immortality was only because there wasn't enough power to kill you. That was why it was called immortality. For example, when a world master faced an ancestor, he was immortal. No matter how the ancestor attacked, it wouldn't pose a fatal threat to him. However, what if he faced an enemy who was also a world master? The enemy's strength wasn't any weaker than his. At this time, there was no such thing as immortality. Hearing this, the other 2 world lords of the Origin World didn't hesitate to agree with him. They also knew that since Chinshuru and the other women had appeared, there was no chance of winning this battle. Therefore, retreating was the only choice unless they wanted to die here. However, what was the point of dying in battle? To put it bluntly, it was a pointless death. It was completely useless. The 3 of them reached a consensus and began to try to escape. Sensing this, 100 Flower Fairy's eyes were overflowing with killing intent. Sister Shuido, Sister Lingyao, don't worry about that person. The 4 of us will work together and kill as many of us as we can. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 2867. Seeing that the 3 of them wanted to escape, Flower Fairy made a prompt decision. She ordered Chinshuru and Gu Lingyao to ignore that person and join her. The 4 of them worked together to keep the World Lord in front of them. Seeing that the 3 of them wanted to escape, Flower Fairy made a prompt decision. She ordered Chinshuru and Gu Lingyao to ignore that person and join her. The 4 of them worked together to keep the World Lord in front of them. If the 2 of them worked together, it would be difficult to keep the World Lord if he wanted to leave. However, it was different when there were 4 of them. Since they couldn't keep all 3 of them at the same time, they could at least keep one of them. This was the second best option. It was difficult to keep all 3 of them at the same time, so they had to use all their strength to keep one of them. The person that Flower Fairy and Hongxiu were dealing with was the one with the most serious injuries. He was also the weakest of the 3. They had the highest chance of keeping him, so they naturally chose him as their target. Pick the weakest one, especially at a time like this. They naturally chose the one with the highest chance of keeping the World Lord. Hearing Flower Fairy's words, Qin Shuru and Gu Lingyao instantly understood what she meant. Without hesitation, they left the person in front of them and went straight for Flower Fairy and Hong Xiu, completely blocking the World Lord's escape route. Seeing that Qin Shuru and the other two girls had all targeted the World Lord, although the other two wanted to save him, they knew very well that they couldn't do so at this time. If they insisted on saving him, they would only put themselves in danger in the end. Therefore, the best choice at this time was to retreat. The two of them were very straightforward. Or rather, after losing their 7 emotions and 6 desires, they didn't care about such things at all. Because without emotions, you wouldn't even know what friends and brothers were. Faced with such a situation, you would only choose what you felt was the most correct choice. Therefore, the remaining 2 people didn't hesitate at all to turn around and leave. This was especially true for the World Lord, who had been fighting fiercely with Qin Shuru and Gu Lingyao. Without Qin Shuru and Gu Lingyao stopping him, he turned around without hesitation and instantly disappeared from where he stood. As for the other World Lord who was fighting against Yin Pang and Tianyu, although Yin Pang and Tianyu were blocking him, he still managed to escape successfully. As the World Lords chose to retreat, the rest of the people also chose to retreat and rushed in the direction of the space passage. They had simply been utterly defeated, and they hadn't stopped or hesitated at all. Along with this scene, it meant that the origin world had been completely defeated. Moreover, they would probably have to pay the price of a World Lord. Qin Shuru and the other 5 had completely surrounded the World Lord. After the origin world had retreated, Xin Yuanling and Wang Qing had also come over. 8 World Lords attacked at the same time and wanted to kill a World Lord. The final result was self-evident. Under the joint attack of the 8 people, the World Lord couldn't do anything at all. He couldn't even defend himself, let alone counterattack. Escaping was out of the question. Soon, he was severely injured. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before he was killed. The goal of Qin Shuru and the other 5 was very simple, which was to kill this World Lord. They had let go of the other 2 World Lords and only left this one behind. Their goal was to kill this World Lord. If that wasn't the case, why would they leave him behind? The fall of a World Lord was something that no one present had ever seen before. Even Yin Pang and Qin Shuru hadn't seen the fall of a World Lord. After all, in other times, it was basically impossible for a World Lord to fall. This was because it was very difficult to kill a World Lord in a 1-on-1, 2-on-1, or 3-on-1 situation. The situation of 8 World Lords besieging a World Lord was even more impossible under normal circumstances. It was also because of this special time that everyone was able to witness such a scene. Blood kept coming out of his mouth. Besieged by Qin Shuru and the other 5 people, the World Lord was at the end of his rope. Around them, many people from Great Rock Palace, Shao Qing, Junwuya, and the others were watching the battle with a complicated expression. They might be witnessing the fall of a World Lord with their own eyes. Time passed slowly. It had to be said that the vitality of a World Lord was very strong. Under the joint attack of Qin Shuru and the other 5 people, a full 4 hours had passed, but the World Lord was still alive. His huge vitality allowed him to hold on for 4 hours. But so what? The result was already predetermined. In the end, under the joint attack of Qin Shuru and the other 5 people, the World Lord still died. The 8 people's attacks hit at the same time. His vitality dissipated quickly and his soul was destroyed. However, after the World Lord was killed, his corpse exploded. No one had expected that after the World Lord died, his corpse would explode. However, after the corpse exploded, a terrifying spiritual energy instantly spread out. This spiritual energy was the lifetime cultivation of the World Lord. It was extremely powerful. Such rich and pure spiritual energy spread in all directions. Under the shroud of this spiritual energy, everyone present felt extremely comfortable. Besides, the cultivation in their bodies seemed to have started to improve automatically with the help of this spiritual energy. This is, someone said in disbelief. They had never felt such a feeling before. The World Lord was dead, but it seemed to have given everyone a great opportunity. His huge lifetime of cultivation seemed to have formed a spiritual energy storm, enveloping everyone in it. And this spiritual energy was completely different from ordinary spiritual energy. There was no need to refine it at all. It would enter one's body on its own and help improve one's cultivation. There was no need to explain how precious the spiritual energy of a World Lord was. At this moment, no one present was foolish. They quickly understood that this was a great opportunity for them. Who would have thought that a World Lord would leave behind such blessings after his death? This was simply like rain from the heavens. In an instant, everyone went crazy. Compared to the others, Qin Shiru, Flower Fairy, Xianyuan Ling, Yin Peng, and the others were relatively calm. After all, they were also World Lords, and the spiritual energy of a World Lord wasn't very useful to them. The attraction was also very small, so it wasn't worth going crazy over. But looking at this scene, they couldn't help but lament inwardly. Perhaps only a World Lord could do this. Even after his death, he was still incomparably shocking. He was the true master of a universe. After his death, he turned into a spiritual rain that filled the sky to benefit the people. Perhaps this is the true meaning of being a World Lord, Xianyuan Ling said with a sigh. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 2868. Even if they were killed, they would still benefit the common people. Perhaps this was the true meaning of being a World Lord. Even if they were killed, they would still benefit the common people. Perhaps this was the true meaning of being a World Lord. They were the masters of the universe and also the protectors. Even if they died, they could still bring blessings to all living beings. Under the cover of the rich spiritual energy, many of the people present directly broke through the barrier of their cultivation level and completed their breakthroughs. To the people of the Great Rock Palace, this was definitely a great opportunity. They thought that the cultivation of a World Lord had turned into a great opportunity that helped them complete their breakthroughs. Many thanks. Yin Peng took the initiative to cup his hands and thanked Xianyuan Ling and the others. This time, Xianyuan Ling and the others had contributed greatly to stopping the Origin World's attack. However, they did not mind. After all, they had rushed over mainly because of Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others. If Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others were not in the Nightmare Awakened world, Xianyuan Ling and the others would not have rushed over in such a hurry. They had temporarily resolved the crisis. After all, after this defeat, the Origin world would not have the energy to organize another attack for a short period of time. Only when the battles in other universes accelerated would the Origin world be able to attack the Nightmare Awakened world again. However, this was hard to say. Once the primogenitors knew about Xianyuan Ling and the others, they might personally take action. As such, they could not let down their guard. Brother Yin Peng, although the Origin world's people have retreated, we still need to arrange people to closely monitor the spatial channel. If there are any abnormal movements, we need to know immediately. Of course. They still needed to arrange people to guard the spatial channel. Of course, this task would be completed by the people of the Great Rock Palace. Yin Peng did not have any objections to this. After the battle ended, some people were left to guard the spatial channel while the others returned to the Great Rock Palace. Qin Shiru and the others could not wait to see Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan. On the way back to the Great Rock Palace, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and Xiao Luan had rushed over after hearing the news. When they saw Qin Shiru and the others, they happily greeted them, "Mother." Seeing Qin Shiru and the others, the three children were very happy. At the same time, Qin Shiru and the others were the same. Seeing that they were safe and sound, they let out sighs of relief. Qin Shiru looked at the three children. Qin Shiru looked at the three children. Their parents were not by their side, and the situation in the outside world was like this. It was conceivable that these three little fellows had suffered a lot. Fortunately, they were safe in the end, and there were no accidents. After this incident, the three children had obviously matured a lot. They smiled and nodded. Yin Peng, who was standing at the side, was aware that he did not disturb them. Looking at the family who had reunited after a long time, Yin Peng just stood quietly at the side. However, he still had a question in his heart, and that was the cultivation level of Qin Shuru and the others. No matter how hard Yin Peng thought about it, he could not figure out how so many world lords could be born in this universe. It was completely illogical. He had never even heard of such a thing. Yin Peng had seen with his own eyes that there were as many as 7 world lords in this great wide world. In addition to Xiaochen, who he had never seen before, there were at least 8 world lords in the great wide world. How could such a thing happen? If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Yin Peng would never have believed it. However, now that the facts were in front of him, it was impossible for him not to believe it. Yin Peng had always been curious about the reason why so many world lords were born in the great wide world. He did not pay attention to Yin Peng at the side. At this moment, Qin Shuru and the other women's attention was on the 3 children. They had always been worried about them. Now that they had seen them, they naturally had endless things to say. This was what it felt like to be a mother. After chatting for a while, Xian Yuanling finally spoke up. Let's talk about it when we go back. After all, this is not the place to talk. As a man, Xian Yuanling was naturally calmer than the women. In this regard, Qin Shuru and the other women did not refuse. After greeting Yin Peng, Xian Yuanling stayed, and the women followed Xiao Yao and the other 2 to their residence. After watching everyone leave, Xian Yuanling said to Yin Peng apologetically, "Brother Yin Peng, I'm sorry." "Ha, it's nothing. It's human nature. Brother Xian Yuan, shall we have a drink?" After this battle, Yin Peng had gotten to know Xian Yuanling and took the initiative to invite him for a drink. Xian Yuanling did not refuse and nodded readily. After that, the 2 of them went to Yin Peng's cave residence. As for other matters, naturally, they would be handled by the subordinates. The 2 of them sat opposite each other. In the company of good wine, their relationship quickly became close. Of course, first of all, Yin Peng thanked Xian Yuanling and the others for their help. He frankly said that if it were not for Xian Yuanling and the others, this battle would not have ended like this. After all, it was impossible for him to fight 1 against 3. "Brother Xian Yuan, I'd like to propose a toast to you. Thank you for your help." "Brother Yin Peng, you're treating me as an outsider. You and I have the same purpose. Since that's the case, it's only right that we help each other." "Ha, well said. I'm being pretentious." As they spoke, they drank. The wine that Yin Peng took out was indeed good. It could be seen that this was a treasure that he had collected. As for Xian Yuanling, although he was not a wine addict, he also liked good wine very much. After drinking to his heart's content, Yin Peng finally could not help but ask. "Brother Xian Yuan, actually, I've always had a question." "Oh, Brother Yin Peng, there's no harm in asking. According to what we know, there is only 1 world lord in each universe. But why would the vast 1,000 worlds?" Before Yin Peng finished speaking, Xian Yuanling had already understood his meaning and said with a smile. "Brother Yin Peng, have you heard of the land of creation?" In response, Yin Peng shook his head. He had indeed not heard of the land of creation. Just like Xiaochen and the others, they did not know of such a place at all. If it were not for the beast slaves, Xiaochen and the others would not have known about it. In this regard, Xian Yuanling did not hide anything. He briefly explained the land of creation to Yin Peng and learned that Yin Peng and the others had broken through to World Lord in the land of creation. Moreover, there was the existence of the spirit of heaven and earth. Even Yin Peng could not help but be shocked. As a World Lord, he did not know that there was such a place in this world, and that there was even a spirit of heaven and earth. He could not help but sigh sincerely. "I see. Seeking collection, monthly votes, recommendations." Chapter 2869. Yin Peng was indeed shocked by Shen Yuanling's description of the land of creation. He had thought that as a world lord, he had a good understanding of the world and knew many of its secrets. Yin Peng was indeed shocked by Shen Yuanling's description of the land of creation. He had thought that as a world lord, he had a good understanding of the world and knew many of its secrets. However, who would have thought that there would be a place like the land of creation and a world spirit? All of a sudden, he regretted not looking for Shaochen earlier. If he had done so earlier, he might have been able to enter the place of creation and see the place of legends. Ai, what a pity! If only I had met Brother Shen Yuan earlier, Yin Peng said regretfully after drinking some wine. In response, Shen Yuanling only smiled and did not reply. The Nightmare World's crisis had been resolved for now, and within the land of creation, Lu Bingning, Lin Yuan, Gong Nantian, and the others had been patiently waiting for Xiao Chen and the others. Now, all they had to do was wait for Xiao Chen and the others to come out of seclusion, and then they would be able to fight the primogenitors. Every day, Xiao Qing would pay close attention to Xiao Chen and the others. Among them, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun were still the two who were making the fastest progress. If nothing went wrong, the two of them should not be far from coming out of seclusion. Among the world lords, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun's strength was definitely at the top, which was why their seclusion had gone so smoothly. In actuality, Little Qing had never seen anyone who could cultivate to such a level. After all, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun were just ordinary people. They did not have the advantages of the primogenitors and ancient creatures, nor were they favored by the heavens and earth. Even so, the two of them had relied on their own efforts to cultivate to such a level. In fact, if it was not for the laws of the heavens and earth, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun would have been able to break through the restrictions of the world lords with their ordinary bloodlines. Little Qing was very satisfied with Xiao Chen and Lin Yun. She could foresee that once the two of them finished their seclusion, their strength would most likely surpass that of ordinary ancient creatures and could rival the primogenitors. This was something that Little Qing had not expected, but to everyone else, this was good news. The stronger Xiao Chen and Lin Yun were, the higher their chances of victory would be. Several days passed in a row. In the seclusion grounds of Xiao Chen and Lin Yun, the sea of blood gradually became violent. This was a sign that they were about to come out of seclusion. At the same time, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun's physical bodies had been completely formed. Their appearances did not change much, but the power contained in them was completely incomparable to before. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. Once their physical bodies were formed, it basically meant that their closed-door training was a success. Moreover, a terrifying power uncontrollably spread out from their bodies. Judging from their auras, they were not weaker than the ancient creatures like the beast slaves. They were even slightly stronger than the ancient creatures. This was what surprised Little Qing. With the formation of their physical bodies, the unbearable pain was diluted by a lot. At the same time, Little Qing's blood essence had long been refined by the two of them and merged with their bodies. The main source of this physical body's transformation was Little Qing's blood essence. It was the blood essence of a spirit of heaven and earth. This was not something that could be described as a treasure. Moreover, Little Qing had also taken out many treasures. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that Xiao Chen and Lin Yun's new physical bodies were refined from the best things in the world. After all, any item that Xiao Chen took out was definitely the most precious treasure in the world. The sea of blood became violent, and it was obvious that the sea of blood was madly pouring into Xiao Chen and Lin Yun's bodies. This sea of blood was Xiao Chen and Lin Yun's blood. The majestic sea of blood was directly absorbed by Xiao Chen and Lin Yun, and it disappeared very quickly. At the same time, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun slowly opened their eyes. The corners of their mouths unconsciously curled into a faint smile. They succeeded. Their physical bodies were successfully reforged. Together with the improvement of their souls, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun finally completed the transformation. This was the most fundamental transformation from the inside out. At this moment, Xiaochen and Lin Yun had broken through the category of ordinary living beings and became unique existences that enjoyed the protection of heaven and earth like ancient living beings. Is this the power of ancient living beings? The unbearable pain had long disappeared. Feeling the surging power in his body, Xiaochen said softly. How is it? Not bad, right? Just as Xiaochen finished speaking, little Qing appeared in front of him out of nowhere. Hearing this, Xiaochen replied with a smile, it's indeed not bad. I didn't even dare to think about such power before. Your and Lin Yun's performance was indeed beyond my expectations. I thought it was already commendable that you could succeed. However, no one expected that the two of you could do so well. Or rather, you have such great potential. The current you is probably not weaker than ordinary ancient living beings. Even among ancient living beings, you are considered the top. Your combat power is close to those ancestors. Xiaochen and Lin Yun had indeed given little Qing a great surprise. Hearing this, Xiaochen was secretly delighted. This way, there would be more hope for the following battle. Xiaochen and Lin Yun came out of seclusion at the same time. Seeing the two of them, Lu Bingning, Lin Yuan, and Gong Nantian were all delighted. After all, it was indeed great news for them that the two of them had come out of seclusion. However, facing Xiaochen and Lin Yun, everyone felt pressure. Even though they were all world lords, in front of Lin Yun and Xiaochen, the pressure did not decrease. Instead, it increased. They could not see through Xiaochen and Lin Yun's strength at all. This feeling shocked everyone. This could only mean that Xiaochen and Lin Yun were completely different from before. After successfully coming out of seclusion, the two of them were also very happy. They chatted for a while and asked little Qing about what had happened during this time. In the end, Xiaochen asked curiously because he did not see Qin Shuru, Xin Yuan Ling, and Long Qing. Where are Shui Rou and the others? They went to the awakened world. Hearing this, Lu Bingning replied. After hearing that Qin Shuru and the others had gone to the awakened world, Xiaochen nodded, but he could not help but feel worried. However, Mu Lingxian, Mo He, and Dong Fangyun were still in seclusion, so it was not time yet. As such, Xiaochen could only say to little Qing, I want to go to the awakened world first. Xiaochen was worried about Qin Shuru and the others' safety, so he planned to leave the origin world and go to the awakened world first. Little Qing did not refuse, as Mu Lingxian and the others were about to come out of seclusion as well. However, she only reminded little Qing, be careful of the primogenitors. If they know about you, they might not be able to stop themselves from attacking. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 2870. Little Qing did not stop Xiaochen from going to the Nightmare Awakened world. Even if she did, Xiaochen most likely would not listen. Little Qing understood Xiaochen's personality. Little Qing did not stop Xiaochen from going to the Nightmare Awakened world. Even if she did, Xiaochen most likely would not listen. Little Qing understood Xiaochen's personality. However, with Xiaochen's current strength, as long as he was not surrounded by the primogenitors, he should not be in any danger. Even if he faced the primogenitors head-on, if Xiaochen wanted to leave, the primogenitors would not be able to stop him. This was the change after Xiaochen's strength had increased. Now, Xiaochen was no longer as helpless as before when facing the primogenitors. As such, Xiaochen would not be in too much danger heading to the Nightmare Awakened world. This was the main reason why little Qing had agreed to let Xiaochen go, which was to increase his strength. Knowing what little Qing was thinking, Xiaochen nodded and said, I'll go to the Nightmare Awakened world and bring them back. They won't be staying for long. After thinking about it, he decided that staying in the Nightmare Awakened world was not a good idea. It would be safer to bring Qin Shuru, Xiao Yao, and Xiao Lao back to the creation origin world. Little Qing did not refuse and nodded as she said, take this and contact me when the time comes. I'll open the entrance for you. With little Qing's agreement, Xiao Yao, Xiao Lao, and the others could naturally enter the creation origin world. They did not have to go through the soul channel like Xiaochen and the others. Xiaochen nodded, and Lin Yan also wanted to bring Lin Feng and Lin Shui back. She was also worried that the two of them would be outside. Little Qing did not refuse, and Xiaochen and Lin Yan quickly set off. Be careful. See you at the creation origin world. You too. They opened a spatial tunnel at the same time and left quickly. Xiaochen was alone, while Lin Yan was accompanied by Lu Bingning and the other girls. Xiaochen and Lin Yan naturally had the ability to open a spatial tunnel since they already possessed the strength of ancient creatures. Therefore, the two of them could leave the place of creation without Little Qing's help. After Xiaochen came out of closed-door cultivation, the primogenitors in the primordial world also heard about the nightmare world's defeat. After hearing this, Green Ancestor asked curiously, "The nightmare world isn't that powerful, right? Even 3 world lords failed?" "Humph, you don't know about this. There's help. As far as I know, those people are Xiaochen and the rest. However, they have already broken through to become a world lord," Ancestor Mu said coldly. Naturally, what happened in the nightmare world could not be hidden from the primogenitors. Not only could it not be hidden, but the primogenitors had also immediately found out about Qin Shuru and the others' identities. Qin Shuru and the others had gone to help the nightmare world in time, resulting in the nightmare world's defeat. Moreover, one of their world lords had been killed, and only 2 of them had managed to escape. Hearing Ancestor Mu's words, the other primogenitors closed their eyes and did not say anything. In all honesty, the nightmare world's defeat was not enough to make the primogenitors' expressions change. What they cared about was the appearance of Qin Shuru and the others. Looks like they obtained many benefits from the creation origin world. So many of them have broken through to become world lords, one of the primogenitors said after a while. Qin Shuru and the others' breakthroughs were evidently due to the creation origin world. Otherwise, they would not have been able to break through to become world lords. After speaking, the primogenitors' gaze swept across everyone before falling on Qiuzhu. Since they've appeared, let's bring them back. Qiuzhu, tell Hu Huang to go. Hu Huang was also an ancient era creature, but he was on the origin world side. There were not many ancient era creatures in this world, but not every ancient era creature was against the origin world. Naturally, some ancient era creatures supported the origin world, and Hu Huang was one of them. Beast Slave and the others had long since known that Hu Huang had joined forces with the origin world. In fact, from the start, Beast Slave and the others had never thought of roping in Hu Huang because it was simply impossible. As an ancient era creature, Hu Huang had always had a good relationship with the origin world. As such, it was simply impossible for him to deal with the origin world. Everyone had their own ambitions. After all, it was impossible for everyone to support something. If some people supported it, there would definitely be others who opposed it. Hearing this, Qiuzhu silently nodded and did not say anything else. Alright, there won't be any problems if Hu Huang goes personally. We don't have to worry about the nightmare world for now. Let's deal with the battles in the other universes first. The appearance of Qin Shuru and the others made the primogenitors feel even more pressure, so they had to act faster. Time was of the essence. If they could complete the creation of the new world before the battle with Little Blue started, the origin world's chances of winning would be much higher. However, from the current situation, it would probably be very difficult to complete it. However, the faster they acted, the better it would be for the origin world. The matters of the nightmare world were handed over to Hu Huang. After dispersing, Qiuzhu returned to his residence. Currently, Qiuzhu was not the only one there, Hu Huang was also temporarily staying there. The middle-aged man in golden robes was Hu Huang. Seeing Qiuzhu return, Hu Huang lightly smiled and said, "What's wrong? Why do you look so bad?" Hu Huang and Qiuzhu were old friends and knew each other very well. As such, when he saw Qiuzhu, before he could say anything, Hu Huang could tell that Qiuzhu was in a very bad mood. Hearing this, Qiuzhu said helplessly, "It's not just me. You can't run away either. You'll probably be very busy during this period of time.
Oh?
It has to do with me? Of course, they want you to go to the nightmare world. Xiao Chen's wife and children are in the nightmare world, and they hope you can bring them back. Even if you can't bring them back, you have to kill them. Qiuzhu did not hide the fact that he was sending Hu Huang to the nightmare world because he had said before that he would not betray the origin world. Last time, he had already made an exception by letting Xiao Chen and the others go. This time, Qiuzhu did not have any reason to be merciful, so he told Hu Huang everything. Hearing this, Hu Huang lightly smiled and said, "I thought it was something big. It's a small matter, I'll go personally." Hearing this, Qiuzhu did not say anything. With Hu Huang's strength, it would not be a problem for him to go personally. After all, even among the ancient era's living creatures, Hu Huang's strength was definitely quite strong. He was even stronger than the beast slaves and wood spirits. As for Qinshuru and the others, even if they broke through to the World Lord level, they would not be a match for Hu Huang. Qiuzhu was very confident about this. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.